Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman.
Well, good morning, and a pleasant good Monday morning to each and every one of you. Hope you all had a great weekend. Welcome to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers right here on Chatterbox Sports. We come your way Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to high noon Eastern Time. You can find us on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports. We always ask that you please subscribe to the show. You can also find us on Facebook. We ask you flip the notification switch on if podcasts are more your cup of tea. Search Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman, and you're dialed in. Look, we're going to continue to say our prayers first and foremost for Damar Hamlin and his family. Also like to say thank you for all of those in law enforcement today. This is their day across this great country of ours. Please support all that they do for each and every one of us each and every single day. Thank you. All right, here we go. Bengals didn't look all that great, but let's face it, they didn't have to look great. If they win, they knew they were home next weekend for the opening round of the playoffs. That they did, and that they are. Bengals beat the Ravens 27-16 in a very uneven game at Paycor. Joe Burrow admittedly was mediocre at best. He missed some throws, including a couple of touchdowns. But at the end of the day, it was good enough to secure an AFC North title for the second straight year. Bengals have not done that since the 1980s. The Bengals will tee it up with the Ravens again in the wild card round. That's a 3-6 game. It's Sunday night at Paycor, 8:15 p. Now, one of the big questions, if not the single biggest question, after yesterday's game is the health of starting guard Alex Kappa. He injured his ankle yesterday, had to be carted back to the locker room. That's two starting offensive linemen hurt over the last 3 weeks. They had gone the whole year with the same five guys. So now it's Lyle Collins. We don't know about Kappa. We'll wait and see and talk more about that with Dan Hoard coming up a little bit later on. The rest of the AFC playoffs, we know that Kansas City is a number one seed after the win over the Raiders. Patrick Mahomes, not too bad.
I guess.
Not too bad. Number 2, Buffalo hosts Miami Sunday at 1 o'clock. The two teams have split 2 games during the regular season. Casey, do you have the clip of the opening kickoff?
I do.
I got to tell you, there are moments in sports, moments in life, where, if this isn't an act of God, I don't know what is. So here the Bills are at home. Everything that happened with Damar Hamlin, his recovery continues to progress. And then they play yesterday against the New England Patriots, the opening kickoff of the game. Here it is.
And I know this is your time. You'd like to keep us updated.
Yeah, we'll keep everybody posted on Pittsburgh and Cleveland, Miami, and the Jets. We're underway as New England decided to defer after winning the toss. And here's Hines on the run back, breaking a tackle and taking it past midfield. And down the sideline he goes. This is storybook. An opening kickoff return for Damar Hamlin. And this place is absolutely going wild.
Oh, you just said this is storybook. This is almost fate. I just can't believe what just happened. Josh Allen, the same thing. 6 days removed from this incredible
Can't believe it.
scene that we saw with the Bills player down in Cincinnati, and now...
It was just unbelievable. If that doesn't give you chills, I'm not sure what in life Casey McAllister, Paul Fritchner, the Dunce, Brandon Seho, I'm not so sure what would give you chills.
Yeah, what a moment. What a special moment for that team. And there's also something else. It was like 3 years ago in 3 days from that date, that last time they had a kickoff return for a touchdown. Something like that. So it's even more.
The number 3.
Yeah, the number 3.
Yes.
And if you don't know, Damar Hamlin, he's number 3.
Yes.
So it was just a very wild moment for all those Bill fans.
It was amazing. Paul, you're looking good in that TCU sweatshirt, big boy. We'll get to that in a little bit.
One last day to wear it. Well,
yeah,
maybe,
but you know what's pretty tired you're wearing it.
Maybe tomorrow.
Because you picked against him in the semis.
I might be picking against him again.
Oh, my. Get it off.
No way. I'm
Take
wearing
it
it
off.
tomorrow if they win. They lose.
I should have worn it today. I'll wear it tomorrow after they win the national championship tonight. Back to the NFL. Jacksonville knocked off Tennessee over the weekend to take the AFC South. Jacksonville hosts the 5 seed, the LA Chargers. That's a Saturday night game. Over on the NFC side, the Eagles nailed down the number 1 seed in the postseason with a win over the Giants. Jalen Hurts is still in a lot of pain. He did return for Philly for the first time in 3 weeks. And now with a bye, has a full 2 weeks to heal that wounded shoulder. Elsewhere in the NFC, Green Bay. Can you believe it? I mean, they're at home, Lambeau. All they got to do is win to get the final playoff spot with a win over the Lions. But Detroit goes on an 8-minute drive. Fourth quarter for a touchdown. Took the lead and hung on to eliminate the Packers 20-16. Is that Aaron Rodgers' last game as a Packer? Time will tell. Seattle won early in the day over the Rams in overtime, so Seattle gets a number 7 seed, and I got to tell you, we talk about a lot of coaches in this league. Pete Carroll has been a great coach for a long, long time. I'm not so sure this is not his best coaching job ever. If anybody would have told you that Geno Smith would start the year as Seattle's quarterback and that they would reach the playoffs, you'd have said you're out of your mind. And Seattle's defense really isn't even that good anymore. But here they are in the playoffs. And it's going to be a short trip in the playoffs because they play San Francisco Saturday afternoon. Minnesota is a 3 seed. The Vikings host the Giants Sunday at 4:30. Boy, Dallas laid an egg. I mean, they look terrible. Were killed by the Washington Football Wizards, but they're the number 5 seed. They'll play at Tampa Bay on Monday night. The two teams you may remember met in the season opener this year with the Bucs winning at Big D. That's when Dak Prescott broke his thumb. I never remember a playoff game being played on a Monday night. Is this the first time ever?
No, they've done it.
It was last year that they started.
I got to tell you, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to either team.
Do we know who got scheduled it?
It's Tampa Bay and Dallas. Playing in Tampa. I just don't think it's fair. I know that ABC, ESPN is spending a ton of money, et cetera, to do Monday Night Football. It'll be great to watch. Gives us another night of playoff football to watch for the weekend. But to ask those two teams to turn around then, one of the two, and to play the following weekend, I just think it's wrong.
I mean, I guess maybe they could, like, potentially make that team the Sunday night game, right? Like, maybe they throw a bone. Like, I imagine both those teams, America's team and Tom Brady, like, regardless of who it is, it's going to be worthy of a primetime spot in the playoffs. Like, they're not going to get the 1 o'clock game, more than likely. They're going to get, like, a 4 or an 8.
Well, it just seems like it's unfair to me. In other news, the Texans fired head coach Lovie Smith just hours after the team's 13th loss of the season yesterday. The Browns reportedly are letting go of defensive coordinator Joe Woods after his second straight season. Cleveland lost to the Steelers 28-14. College football, the national championship game tonight in L.A. Go Frogs! Go Frogs! I'm not going to ask you to do it, Paul. I can tell you that right now. The TCU Horned Frogs under first-year head coach Sonny Dykes hit it, Paul. Leader of men. Leader of men is right. Trying to pull off the major upset against number 1 and defending national champion Georgia. The Bulldogs, by the way, are trying to become the first back-to-back champion in the college football playoff era. Kickoff set for tonight, 7:30 p.m. Kendre Miller, by the way, the outstanding running back for TCU, is 50-50 on if he'll play after getting injured in the semifinal win over Michigan. College hoops, number 2 Houston beat UC yesterday, 72-59. Cats are 11-6 on the year with a home game this week against East Carolina. On Saturday, Paul, your Xavier Musketeers, little history for the Muskies.
Yeah, big one for Xavier. Big game for Xavier. I mean, there's a chance. Numbers 11 through 17 all lost this past week. So I'm not saying that they're going to be number 11 today, but there's an argument to be made.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think there's an argument to be made for them to be in the top 10.
Oh, I think the way they're playing right now, 9-game winning streak, wins over Connecticut, now Villanova. Chance this week you're playing Creighton and Marquette at home. Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, they're playing great, and I know I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know, but you watch this team the last number of years, and it's no knock on Travis Steele, but when they brought back Sean Miller, they brought back one of the top 10 coaches in college basketball. This guy has got it going on. 88-80 the final there. The Musketeers, as Paul mentioned, have won 9 straight, 13-5 on the year. Maryland beat Ohio State in College Park yesterday. Number 1 Purdue beats Penn State, and Northwestern knocked off number 15 Indiana, 84-83.
Yeah, I didn't see any of that game because we were down at the Bengals, but I went back last night, and, that was ugly. That's a game Indiana needs to win at home. I don't know. I mean, I know they got some injuries, but tough one. Tough one.
Hey, you're going to have tough ones over the course of the year. By the way, how was the Chatterbox get-together, of which I was not invited until the very last minute? Trace Fowler must have been feeling guilty. Sends me a text about, hey, you want to come on down? How was the big Chatterbox bash yesterday at the Bengalis game?
It was good. It was a lot of fun. We all had a really good time.
You guys all drink White Claws down there or High Noons or something?
You know, there was a White Claw booth on the way into the game, and I was very tempted to get a picture or maybe give you a call, Tom, and see if maybe you wanted to come over and join us.
Well, I can assure you, I was fortunate enough, good friend of mine, Thom, he invited a number of us from a neighborhood down. We had 6 guys. Brought our own tailgate. Brought up tied it down on the top of the SUV, little fire pit thing. Brought some hot dogs down there.
There you go, Tom.
Some chicken.
Make it happen.
Cold beer or 2 or 9.
Champagne of beers?
Not yesterday.
Oh.
Went on the lighter side yesterday. You got to stay lean and mean. You know what I mean? Got to stay lean and mean. All right, boys, let's get to this game here. We have hundreds, if not thousands, that are in on the chat, and we thank everybody for being here. Joshua's here. AJ, Everett says White Claws. Let's go. No White Claws. Come on. Come on, Everett. Sirboy Wonder. Something about a Long Island iced tea in the owner's suite at Paycor. I was definitely not in a suite. Definitely not. Did not sit down the entire game. Did you guys sit down?
No, not really.
Yeah. No.
Well, not really. There's no not really. It's like, are you pregnant or not pregnant? It's either yes or no.
I mean, are we counting
when the game
halftime?
was going.
Are we counting halftime?
Yeah, when the game was going
no.
on.
I'm talking about when the game's going on.
No, when the game was going on, we were standing the whole time.
All right, fellas, look, I think everyone agrees. Joe Burrow admitted as much, said after the game he missed some throws. He had that wide-open touchdown. And here's what he had to say after the game. Casey, please roll it.
Oh, hang on.
All right.
I'm going to have to play better next week to get the win, especially me. So it's great to get the win, but on to the next one.
What did it feel like in there as you celebrated? What was that feeling like as you celebrated something?
It's always nice to celebrate with the guys that you work so hard with and to achieve something together. It's a special feeling that I don't think a lot of people get to experience. And so I always cherish those moments.
Is it any different maybe given how the week went for you guys from Monday to now? I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, it was a long week. I think guys started feeling better at the end of the week when we started getting some good updates. But at the beginning of the week, it was tough.
You just referenced your play, but you didn't like the way you played today?
I did not like the way I played today. Just throws I usually make, but I won't miss those again.
I think we all agree the Bengals are going to have to play a lot better this Sunday night to beat the Ravens. When you get in those divisional matchups, and look, the Bengals opened a 17-0 lead in the game. I'm not sure there was more than a play or two where if you're sitting there watching on television or at the game, you didn't feel like they had it in hand. But they were not sharp. The Ravens decided to sit a number of players in the game. We'll wait and see on whether or not Lamar Jackson is back this week at quarterback. They sat the former Bengal, Kevin Zeitler, all-pro guard. He did not play. J.K. Dobbins did not play. And there are still, in my opinion, some questions about the defense and allowing the run. I mean, Baltimore clearly was not at 100% yesterday. Now, the Bengals got a lot of backups in there, too, once they opened that lead. So it's really hard to gauge. It felt to me, you guys tell me if you agree, it felt to me watching the game like both teams were sort of prodding and poking to look around for what was coming this coming week. That's the way it felt like to me.
Yeah, that was the same vibe I got, Tom, where you just kept thinking to yourself, okay, what are the Bengals going to show in this game? What are they not going to show? What are they going to hide? What do they not want to give away to the Ravens before a game that actually means something? Now, I know you had a little bit to play for here. You get to play at home in front of your home fans next week. But you're already going to the postseason, and you pretty much already know that you're going to play the team that you're playing right now. So whether it's at Paycor or whether it's out at M&T Bank Stadium, what's it matter really when you're talking about the scheme on the field of what you're going to show to the other team? So, I don't know if the Bengals really gave away everything in this game. I think they probably held some stuff back. At least that's the way it seemed to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They did not show their complete hand.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure Baltimore did either, to be completely honest. And look, let's face it, if that kid, God bless him, but if that kid starts a quarterback again for them, I mean, I don't know what Huntley's deal is, and, of course, we're all waiting on Jackson, but they have no chance.
Well, it was interesting looking at the opening lines for the game that there were contingency lines out there where it was 5.5 for the Bengals if Lamar played, 8.5 for the Bengals if Huntley played, and then if the kid yesterday, Anthony Brown. I was going to say Antonio Brown. Anthony Brown played. It was a 10-point line. So it just goes to show, I mean, nobody knows what's going on now. The Bengals right now are 5.5, 6-point favorites. But, yeah, nobody knows what's going on with what's Lamar going to do. You have to think he's going to play, right?
Well, I mean, I love the line that Brian Billick had last week, and he's going to join us today. Dan Hoard, by the way, is coming up at 11:30 to talk the Bengals, the game yesterday, more about the upcoming game and what he expects. But Brian Billick will join us at 11 to talk about a number of issues around the NFL. He called the game yesterday, filling in on Ravens Radio, their local broadcast. So he was right there front and center, and I'm sure he'll be able to speak to, were they holding back, were they not holding back, et cetera, both teams. But, we talked about it on Friday of last week a little bit with Brian, this Lamar Jackson thing, and his line that I loved was, there's a time to pay, and there's a time to play. We have not seen Lamar Jackson in 4 weeks. I will never, have never, and will never question a person's pain tolerance, injury, how severe it is. But look, it's only natural to start weaving all of these things together with his contract situation. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He was looking for more guaranteed money than the contract that was given to Patrick Mahomes. Lamar Jackson's a great player. He ain't in the same galaxy with Patrick Mahomes. Not even close. So, Casey, you brought this up a number of weeks ago before Jackson was even hurt, that if you're Baltimore, are you going to pay this guy? And I think we all agree the Ravens have not done a very good job surrounding him with a lot of skill talent, right? J.K. Dobbins is a really good back when he's healthy, injures his ACL, didn't come back really full speed until about the last 2-3 weeks. They sat him down yesterday, as we mentioned. He's a good back. And the other kid's a good back. But as far as wide receivers are concerned, they've taken a flyer on this guy, flyer on that guy, brought another guy back who had left and gone to Green Bay and all this kind of thing. But whoever the quarterback is there next year, the Ravens are going to have to decide what they want to be. Do they want to be this ground and pound, run the ball all the time kind of team? If so, why bother to go get receivers? Or do they want to be a team that can start slinging it around a little bit, in which case they got to go get some players?
Agreed. Yeah, it's really hard to look at the Ravens and not just be worried about them in the future. If you're a Ravens fan, I mean, if they don't sign Lamar, it's going to be a brutal process on offense to get this team to be where it needs to be. I mean, I know I sat up here earlier in the season and said Tyler Huntley, I think, would have been a better quarterback. I've since kind of shift my opinion because the team itself is really struggling without having those receivers. I mean, they need some guys to threaten and stretch the secondary. They need guys to be able to get that eighth man out the box. You know, they talk about dropping down that safety. That's all you really need to do. But when you have Lamar in the backfield and you have to worry about his elusiveness, it's almost like that eighth guy isn't as big of a benefit for the Bengals or whoever's playing as it would for other teams. And so I feel like if you're the Ravens, personally, I would not sign him. After what's been going on, he's been hurt, and he's been hurt for an extended period of time.
2 years in a row.
2 years in a row. And even if he is just kind of holding out to try to burn the Ravens a little bit to make them want to give him a contract, I think it's actually going to backfire in the long haul.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, since he has gone down, and this is where you get into the whole thing, the chicken or the egg, right? I mean, if you're him, in your absence, I think they're averaging right around 12 or 13 points per game, right? With him out.
Yeah.
Well, they were averaging a lot more than that with him in there. And look, it's a different animal. It's a different cat altogether, man, if the Bengals have to face this guy this coming week. The Bengals are a better team. There's no doubt about that. But the Ravens' defense is pretty good, and it's a whole different element if Lamar Jackson is on the field. The Bengals Report, by the way, is brought to you by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data-centered world with a suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work-from-home computing models to improve efficiency and productivity. Visit encore.tech. The path to innovation begins here. The other big story from the game yesterday is, without a doubt, I mentioned it in the monologue, Alex Kappa. Now, we don't know, and Zach Taylor would not comment on, he said point blank he didn't know right after the game as to what the future is for Alex Kappa. He injured his ankle during the game. And by the way, we'll get to this in a minute. Some felt there was a lot of dirty play going on out there. The Bengals, especially on defense, they would not name names. I think Cam Taylor-Britt was the closest to coming out there. But a lot of the Bengals defenders felt there were some cheap shots, some plays through and beyond the whistle in the game yesterday that was going on. But Kappa was not injured in one of those kind of plays. He injured his ankle. He, was helped over to the sideline, eventually needing a cart to get him back to the locker room. Well, I understand he was unable to walk in the locker room after the game. This potentially is a huge blow for the Bengals because many feel like he is the heart and soul of that offensive line.
Agreed. Definitely played like one of the best offensive linemen on our team. And, I'm not going to dwell on this long, but I am pretty pissed off that the Ravens get to sit their guys. They were afforded the opportunity to sit their guys, whereas we had to play to win in order to get our home field advantage. I mean, take away the dirty plays. You play a game in football, and there's a likelihood that there will be an injury at some point. And the fact that it happened to our best offensive lineman, that's a victory for the Ravens. It's a victory. They don't care that they lost. They wanted to, A, scout us, B, play the game and see if you can come away with some small victories, and that was a small victory for them.
So you don't feel like the Ravens had anything to play for yesterday? Now, one could say that John Harbaugh felt the same way by sitting down Zeitler and Dobbins and some other guys and not starting them. But, I mean, look, if they win that game yesterday, they're a coin flip away from playing in Baltimore next week.
Yeah, but it's still up to chance. Like, I don't think in their mind, why even leave it up to chance? Like, they don't control that, which is, again, we talked about this last Friday. I mean, they were in just as bad a spot as the Bengals, in my opinion, but they decided to go the other route where they conceded having home field advantage to get scouting and to just see what happens in that Bengals game. Maybe you get lucky with a few injuries, and you now have an advantage that you didn't have before. The Bengals could have rested their guys, but they had to play if they wanted home field advantage.
Well, not only that, they had to play to find out if they had a chance for the 2 seed.
For the 2 seed, which, again, kind of stinks that there's not like I understand they both play the same amount of games, whatever. It's still not – I'm not going to sit up here and complain. I did that Friday, and I did that a little bit this morning.
You did. You walked in with the quote-unquote – you walked out Friday with a red ass, and you walked in today with a red ass.
Yeah.
You did.
I did.
You thought it was a huge conspiracy by the NFL.
But
going back to Kansas City and all that kind of thing, and changing the rules about win percentage, which were already put in place.
Yeah, but I mean, my mindset now is just focused on demolishing the teams now.
Okay.
Just demolishing the rest of the teams throughout the playoffs. But what I will say is this: the Ravens got what they wanted, 100%.
And I keep failing to mention Mark Andrews, by the way.
Didn't play.
Yeah, that was another guy. So you had Lamar, who was out. And now think about this for a second, okay? Everybody take a step back, all right? Let's pretend the Bengals played in a game yesterday where Joe Burrow didn't play. I think we all agree Andrews is their best offensive weapon in the passing game. So let's make an equivalent, even though they're different positions. Let's draw the analogy of, say, Jamar Chase not playing. Let's also say Joe Mixon didn't play, because that's the equivalent for them of J.K. Dobbins. And let's say for a second that pick your best offensive lineman, Kappa, whoever, right? Karras. Let's pretend one of them didn't play. Zeitler didn't play in the game yesterday. So if all of those guys are back, and 3 of the 4 are definitely going to be back, in Dobbins, Zeitler, and Andrews, we don't know, as we mentioned about Lamar Jackson. But that is a very different Baltimore Ravens team that's going to come rolling in here for Sunday night.
Yeah. Yeah.
Team, remember, that beat the Bengals, even though the Bengals shot themselves in the foot with terrible play calling in that first game. They should have beaten Baltimore.
I was going to say, that's a game that the Bengals should have won.
Yes,
like,
they should.
if you're looking back at that game and you're thinking, oh, the Bengals split the Ravens this year. They lost in Baltimore. That was a Sunday night game. Bad juju on Sunday night against the Ravens. I don't know if I buy into that, because that was a game that the Bengals didn't win, but probably should have won, could have easily won. I don't know if they should have. I always hate playing the should have game, but they could have easily won that game with some better play calling.
Yep.
And the Ravens did as much as they could do against the Bengals in that game, and it took a long Justin Tucker field goal at the buzzer to win the game by 2. So if you're looking back at that Ravens game from all the way back when the Bengals were basically a different team than they are right now,
for sure.
Yeah.
That game doesn't concern me as much. What concerns me is just the status of the two teams right now.
Interesting point here made by Andrew, which I think is very interesting. Whether or not you agree, you tell me. But Andrew says, to me, the Ravens think they're better than the Bengals. You don't sit guys with a chance to host a playoff game if you don't think you're better.
That's true. But, I think John Harbaugh is arrogant, but he is notorious for the analytic stuff, for going for it on 4th down and believing in his guys. I mean, you can't fault.
He's a good coach now.
Yeah, I'm not saying he isn't.
Big time coach.
I'm not saying he isn't. I'm just saying that he has full confidence in his team.
Yes.
So of course he's gonna think that he's got the better team.
Yeah.
And he beat us whenever. That's a fact. He beat us Sunday night week whatever, 7 or 8. I still think, even after all this is said, the Bengals will still win. I don't think that they'll lose because if Lamar plays, he hasn't played in a month.
Great point.
And
hadn't even practiced in a month.
Yeah, I mean, my fear with this game in particular is that this is a very tough matchup. This is a AFC grinded out game. It's going to be very high stakes. This is going to be brutal. I mean, they're going to be going after each other.
No doubt.
And you don't want to see more injury. You don't want to see more damage to this team in the nucleus that we've built. I mean, but that's why I hated that we had to play our starters this game, because we're going into it not at full strength, or not what we could have been. We're going into it hurt, limping. We've gone into it with a potential mindset. And I don't think this is what they're thinking, but they didn't play great. And what if, in their mind, some of them are a little less confident now? And it just takes a tiny bit, just a tiny crack. But despite all that, I still think they'll win.
I do too, but, all of a sudden, I mean, Burrow was under some pressure yesterday. We got our first look playing regularly from a new right tackle. Now it's potential that Karras' backup, or Kappa's backup, forgive me. Why am I drawing a blank on his name? Yeah, he started 33 games, second-round pick in 2019, started 33 games for the Texans. Bengals got him off a waiver claim, and he's a guy who came in yesterday and figures to be the starter if Kappa can't go this week. So we'll talk more about that. We're going to talk about the College Football National Championship. We'll also get into some of the other matchups around the NFL. Now we know the playoff schedule. That and more coming up next on Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Gentlemen?
Yep.
It's that time of the show, the Ham and Eggers. These guys are great. Trust me, I would know. I introduce all the best segments.
So,
this is the best part of the show. You should just, you should just leave it. This is the best part of the show.
Yeah, we really need to get some ad on that door.
Yeah. Casey, you have, I was going to say to use your stink list here, but I think we leave that for Thom.
I just kind of want to show.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to show this because we were all in agreement that Joe Burrow was a little off, right?
Sure.
Even at Joe Burrow's a little off, he manages to do stuff like this, guys. Oh, a no-look throw. Perfect to Tyler Boyd.
You know who does that really well?
Yeah,
You know who does that really well?
I think a quarterback that we all know.
Yeah. Patrick Mahomes does that real well. Patrick Mahomes does that real well.
Yeah, he does. And what's crazy is that there is no attention on this whatsoever. We might be the only company in the whole flipping United States showing Joe Burrow throw a no-look pass because that's the new hot thing. I'm just saying there is a clear and obvious favoritism to Patrick Mahomes. But that's not the point of this. The point of this is, even at Joe Burrow's not so great days, he's still pretty damn good, guys. I mean, he is elite.
Joe? I mean, yeah, he was 25 for 42 or whatever he was, and he still had a great afternoon. I mean, you still think about what he did and what he didn't do, and you still feel like he did as well as he could have done under the circumstances in the second half when you're just trying to win a game but not show as much as you need to show. Yeah, that's about all I got.
Yeah,
I mean,
so I just wanted to say, if there's any doubters out there about this game, which I don't think there's very, very many, Joe Burrow's elite. And that play just kind of shows it. Thom?
Well, there's no doubt Joe Burrow is elite. I mean,
even at his worst.
I've said, well, look. He was not good yesterday. You say whatever you want. He was not good yesterday. Okay, I think that play's unbelievable. I'm giving you that. But I'm saying, he admitted himself that there were plays he's going to have to make this coming Sunday night that he did not make in a game yesterday. And look, everybody can have an off day. But now you can't. There's no such thing as off days anymore. No chance. None. And Burrow has proven that when he plays in the biggest games, whether it's his college career, his very young pro career, that he's at his best in the biggest games. But there are no more hiccups. None. You got the Ravens divisional game, a lot of dislike between the two teams. You've got them, then potentially a trip to Buffalo the following week. If Buffalo beats Miami and the Bengals beat the Ravens. And then you're going to have to play the AFC Championship game if you can get past Buffalo against, any number of teams. The number 1 seed is Kansas City. The only chance the Bengals can have to play in the AFC Championship game at home is if somehow, some way, the winner of the Jacksonville Chargers game is able to shock Kansas City at Arrowhead. And if you were a betting man, you would think the Chargers would have a better shot at being able to do that. Much more familiar with them. I think you have a better chance of seeing an upset in the playoffs from a higher seeded to a lower seeded team when you have division opponents because they know you inside and out. So for Buffalo this week, now Tua's not been ruled out, correct?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, he had, those concussion issues early in the year. We know all about those. One of them, of course, took place on that Thursday night right here in Cincinnati. He came in on his own this time last week, and said he was suffering from similar type of, concussion-like issues. He did not play in the game yesterday. Now, when he played early in the year, Miami beat Buffalo. And they are, without a doubt, a different team when he's in there, even though most recently when he was in there, he was not playing very well. But division games are tough in the postseason.
And talk about a tough road for the Bengals and what you would be talking about in a month, right? If we're sitting here on February 14th and we're talking about the Bengals as Super Bowl champions potentially, and you think of probably how this is going to shake out, right? I mean, there could be upsets, but probably how it's going to shake out to beat the Ravens, who would be a well-earned tough win, then to beat the Bills in Buffalo, then to go back to Arrowhead and beat a very hungry Kansas City team in Kansas City.
No doubt.
And then potentially, think about this, potentially in the Super Bowl, you're playing, look, whether it's the Eagles or the 49ers and your guy, Brock Purdy, or the Cowboys, whoever it is, it's not going to be the Vikings. Vikings are losing this Sunday because they got stuck at 4:30, not 1 o'clock.
Huh.
Tough L for them.
All right, let me ask you boys. Go ahead, finish your thought there.
No, I just mean I think that this is setting up to be. We talked last week. I made the point that there could be some doubters to this, an asterisk for this Bengals Super Bowl run because of what happened in the Monday Night Football game where, you didn't play the game. So now there's no asterisk to this run now when you look at how it's setting up and what the Bengals are going to have to overcome.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be a single doubt, right? Like we're not getting the easiest path. We're getting probably the toughest path. And
I don't think there's any doubt about that.
No doubt.
There's no doubt that whoever wins this Ravens-Bengals game has the toughest path in the postseason.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's to be.
Well, outside of that Jacksonville Chargers game, they would have the toughest path.
Oh.
But I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you a question. If you had to pick, and apparently, Paul, you've already made yours based on a 4:30 kickoff. I hope there's more to it than just that.
No.
As Tom Cruise once said in A Few Good Men, right? Or actually, Jack Nicholson was the one who said that, right?
Few Good Men.
Few Good Men, one of the great movies of all time.
Great flick.
If you had to pick one upset for the playoffs this weekend, An upset is going to be measured, in my opinion, and for this show, as a higher-seeded team beating a lower-seeded team, or vice versa, however you want to say it. If there's one upset special for either one of you, do you have one, or are the favorites across the board?
No, the Giants. I'm picking the Giants.
You think the Giants are going to beat Minnesota in Minnesota?
Yes, at 4:30.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm not buying.
It's only
Daniel
a 3-point
Jones.
spread.
I don't care. I'm not buying Daniel Jones.
Based off of your prerequisites, where it has to be a higher seed.
Yeah.
loses.
So like the Chargers, even though Jacksonville, are they favored Jacksonville in that game?
By a point and a half.
Okay, so it's a wash. But you know what I'm saying.
I mean, to me, I think the Chargers should beat the Jaguars, but I think that would be the biggest. If the Jaguars beat the Chargers, I think that would be the biggest upset to me. I know that doesn't fit the requirement, but
I got you.
Chargers are 1.5 favorites.
I mean, that would be crazy to me for Jacksonville to go to Kansas City. Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne.
I mean, there's no way Miami beats Buffalo, right? I mean, that's not even that's an afterthought.
I can't even.
There's no world where Buffalo loses at home to Miami.
The only chance that can happen is if Tua is in there.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's the only chance it can happen. And look, stranger things in this world have happened. I mean, I wouldn't bet against it. I'm not a gambling man anyway, but there's no way I'm betting on Buffalo to lose at home in the opening round. But again, I continue to get back to there is such a difference. And if you really follow the NFL for a long period of time, and many of you do, you guys do, the division games are by far the most difficult to play in because they really do know you. I mean, they know you better in some cases than maybe you know yourselves. And that's why they tend to be close games, tend to be a little more on the lower scoring side. And look, when you're the starting left guard for the Ravens, you know what DJ Reader's all about. It's not like seeing him for the first time and all of a sudden he hits you right in the mouth that first play of the game. You're going, oh, man, I know what I'm in for. You know what you're in for the game starts. It's not like watching film on a team you haven't seen all year long.
Right.
So, and look, there's a history there now with the Ravens. Okay, you go back to the game last year where the Bengals put up 525 yards of offense on them. Some people feel like the Bengals ran it up on them. The Ravens were not happy. There were comments, as I made earlier, that some felt yesterday got dirty. The Bengals players said it point blank, thought there were some cheap shots out there on the field by the Ravens offense, not the Ravens defense, the Ravens offense. Did you guys think there were cheap plays in that game? Now, again, somebody for Baltimore might turn around and say, well, what about the Jackson Carman play? That was a play through the whistle, guy's out of bounds, drives him straight into the ground. I wish we'd have seen more of that from Jackson Carman the last 2 or 3 years, to be honest with you. Am I right or wrong on that?
No,
He'd be
right.
starting
You're
for this team right now because he's talented enough to be a starting offensive lineman in the NFL for a decade. They haven't seen that kind of toughness about him. But the Ravens feel like that's a dirty play too.
Yeah, I mean, it was always going to be a rough and tough match, but if you want to go blow for blow, I thought the Ravens had more dirty plays. I wasn't really keeping track. I do know that we had a couple of flagrant flare-ups here and there.
Yep. Well, the only 2 personal foul penalties in the entire game were both on the same play, both by Bengals, for a face mask and Hendrickson on a late hit on the quarterback, right?
I do believe so.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that's right.
Just a little quick nugget here. They released the results of that vote from last week on the rule change or whatever you want to say about.
Yep.
So there were 25 votes in favor of that rule change. Four teams abstained. 3 teams voted no. The teams that abstained were Kansas City, Buffalo, Las Vegas, and the Chargers. And then the teams that voted no were Cincinnati and Miami, and then also Chicago. So you had all playoff teams and then the Bears. The Bears on the Bengals side. But those were the 7 teams that did not vote in favor. And Bengals needed 9. They only got 7. Now, even if they had gotten the 9, there's not even a guarantee that the Bengals would have had 2 home games because they still would have had to go back and rewrite and figure out the rules. They would have still had to figure out some solution.
No, they would have just gone to the rule book and it would have been winning percentage.
Yeah, but they would not have had that for the second round over Buffalo.
No, they would be stuck
They would
at
have had
3.
to go to Buffalo.
That's what.
Yeah,
That's
they
what
would be
I'm
stuck
saying.
at 3.
Yeah.
But that's, I think they were fine with that, honestly, if you want my honest opinion.
I just, the whole abstention thing. I mean, come on. Come on. It's like a tie in soccer, for crying out loud. Be a man. Yay or nay? None of this abstention stuff. Am I right or wrong?
I agree with you.
lay it out there. And why didn't they make these results open to the public beforehand?
Yeah. Now
If you're going to change the rules in the NFL, put it out there. Who voted for who? We should have known that on Friday.
Why did the NFC teams get a vote in this?
I don't know. That is kind of weird.
Just because to change the rules, you have to have a 24.
Oh, I know why.
You know what I'm saying.
I know why. I'm just being the contrarian.
The Ravens voted for it.
Yeah, I know.
Tom, we don't need to spend a ton of time on this because we're getting to Dan, but we have to spend some time on this.
What's that?
There's something on the screen.
Oh, is this a final version of Casey's stink list? Is this it?
This is the end of the regular season stink list.
Okay.
So we're going to have one more after the Super Bowl, but this is it. This is the regular season.
I cannot believe the first thing that just jumps off the map is that second column, the first team. I cannot believe you have a number 1 seeded team
By default.
that is tied for the best record in the NFL.
By default.
They lost 3 games all year. And you mean to tell me you're putting them on the borderline good rather than title town?
Wait, aren't the Seahawks? Where are the Seahawks here?
Seahawks are
in the stink and they're in the playoffs.
So are the Giants. So are the Ravens.
Yeah, all 3 of those teams are probably one and done.
So are the Dolphins. So are the that's the Rams.
But the Dolphins are way deep down there. I don't think they. If they have Tua, I think they move up a bit. But
could you please just explain to me Kansas City? So you're putting Kansas City in the same boat as the Minnesota Vikings? Patrick Mahomes v. Kirk Cousins?
Yep.
Could you please elaborate on that a little bit?
Well,
Some want to know if Skip Bayless made this list. Go ahead. Please, Casey, explain how in the world.
The Chiefs are, I don't want to say they're kind of fraudy, but.
How are the Chiefs fraudy, Casey? I'd love to hear this.
Because they can't they can't beat us, and they hardly.
Oh boy.
They barely beat the Bills, and they got the number 1 seed by default.
Okay, but that wasn't their fault. That doesn't make them fraudy, though. That wasn't their fault.
That's true, but they play in a terrible division.
That they do.
They play a very weak schedule.
I'll give you
but
that.
We're not going to go into the schedule thing because everyone plays either a weak or a strong schedule. Whatever. To me, when it comes down to it, I just have a feeling they're going to get to the AFC Championship and fumble the bag again. Or the Jaguars will just completely surprise me, beat the Chargers, and then beat Kansas City. I really have something in my back pocket.
Oh, my God.
Lordy.
This show has gone to the tank.
Lordy.
But, let's take a look at this list again,
Did you just say somebody might beat the Jaguars might beat Kansas City?
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, anything's possible. I get that.
Possible. But, I really want to bring up one thing.
All right, please do.
And I just now realized that there's kind of an oversight. The Lions should be borderline stink.
I knew that was coming.
The Lions deserve to be in the playoffs.
Yes, they do. I agree with you 1,000%. I think if the Lions played the Seahawks today, the Lions would beat them.
I think it's a shame.
9-8. What a year, though, for the fighting Chris Spielmans. It's a real man.
He's a real man.
Chris Spielman's a real man. And Dan Campbell's a real man. That guy yesterday, who doesn't want to play for that guy?
You know what's interesting?
Goes forward on 4th down late, could have kicked a field goal.
Well, I thought a couple of things were interesting, and I think Collinsworth was the one that made this point. Do you think they run that little hook and ladder play if they're going to try to make the postseason? Probably not, but they ran it in that game where they didn't have anything to lose. And you think back to some of the things that the way you decide to call plays in games that matter versus games that don't matter and things that work. And some coaches don't want to look like they have egg on their face when they're playing for something. Like if they were driving there to win that game to make the postseason, if Seattle had lost, then it's a completely different scenario where if they run that hook and ladder and something goes wrong, Dan Campbell looks like the dumbest guy on earth. But they run it there where they have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And I'm not criticizing him at all. I think it's great. I think it should be appreciated what he did and how he did it. I thought it was a ton of fun. I think the Lions were a ton of fun. I'm fine being wrong on the Lions. I said they wouldn't win 4 games this year. I was looking great through 5 weeks and then not so much later. So yeah, no, they had a great year. And I knew as soon as I saw this list and the little preview template, Casey, and I saw the Lions behind 3 other teams that stink, I go, how are they not in the borderline stink?
I know.
I knew that was coming.
It was a complete oversight. Yeah, they deserve to be in the playoffs. I think it's a shame the way it all went down. But congrats, Dan Campbell.
Yep.
I'd like to officially stamp this as the moment that I told you all to come back to at the very beginning of the year when Brandon was still sitting beside me, that the Lions were a sneaky team. I think they proved it there. They were a sneaky team. They deserved it. Okay, now the other teams, right, from borderline stink to title towns, in this order, I think is the odds for them to actually make it to the Super Bowl.
You have the Chargers above the Cowboys?
Yeah.
To make it to the Super Bowl?
The Chargers are not very good. Everybody gets wrapped up in this whole chart. They're just not very good. Their offensive line has been decimated by injuries, and that doesn't hold a candle to the injuries they suffered on defense. Now they're in the playoffs. So, their coach came under a lot of heat early in the year, rightfully so, about some 4th down decisions, et cetera, that cost them from having an even better record than they ended up having. Their quarterback is very dangerous. There's no 2 ways about it. But let me ask you this. Who is more dangerous right now at quarterback, Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I mean, if you had to play one, and they're going to play, but if you had to play one of those 2 teams right now, the Jaguars are feeling it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is the reason why they're very good.
I agree.
I think it's their run game. Travis Etienne is really good. And I think Doug Peterson has done an excellent job getting that team to where it's at. Which you would have cashed in, actually, Saturday night if you had listened to us on Box Lunch. It was like a plus 800 bet for them to make it to the playoffs. So
I think you ought to grow your hair, Casey, like Trevor Lawrence does.
Yeah?
That'd be a good look for you.
By next football season, we could be close.
One of you 2 should consider it. Now, Casey's getting married this summer, so probably not. Because the wedding pictures and all that, you don't want him to look like he's got the mullet going or that kind of thing. Paul?
Well, I know I'm new to the chat, and you can kind of see my hair is like just killing me. It's all over the place today. But yeah, I've kicked it around. I think the longer hair kind of makes me look a little older. I look like I'm 15 anyway, even though I'm 26. So maybe the longer hair would do me some.
Grow out the beard.
Yeah, I know.
Looking really good.
I know it was. I didn't think I would get much approval on that, and it sounded like I did. So yeah, I should have. But oh well.
All right, so that's your playoff prediction. You're saying your upset, Casey, is Jacksonville, which I don't think is an upset.
Oh, well.
I don't think it's an upset. I think Jacksonville is a better team than the Chargers.
Well, I don't think it'll happen. But I think that would be the biggest upset, is what I said before. And the thing is, the Jaguars actually match up really well against the Chargers. The Chargers cannot stop the run. Jaguars are really good at running the ball. The Jags have a pretty decent pass rush that gets after the quarterback. We're looking at a matchup here that I think people are not looking at and saying that this is going to be a close game. Most people think that the Chargers got this, but I don't, and you don't.
I don't at all.
What about you, Paul?
What?
I mean, you got not too picky coming up, Paul. I'm assuming you're going to wait till Thursday to start making bets on the games or picks on the games, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
We're waiting until Thursday.
All right. But your
Giants.
gut, if you just had to bet a money line bet,
Yeah.
thanks to our friends at Betfred, if you had a money line bet, before we get to Brian Billick, money line bet, Jacksonville or the Chargers, who would you take?
Jacksonville.
Okay, that's all we need to know. All right, kind enough to join us, former Super Bowl winning head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. Actually called the game here yesterday in Cincinnati on Ravens radio. Brian, we were talking earlier, and thank you for your time as always. We were talking earlier that it felt like, the Ravens sat down some very key players, especially on offense, with Zeitler and Andrews and no Lamar Jackson and J.K. Dobbins. It felt like there was just a lot of prodding and poking to kind of see what was this or see what was that, knowing you were probably going to play again, and that is now the case this coming Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to play teams twice in a division, and knowing now you're going to do it for a third time. So I think they did take the approach that said, okay, we're going to set some players down, be prudent, like a lot of teams do when they get, the change of their seeding wasn't going to be substantial enough. The big question, obviously, is what happens with Lamar Jackson. But it was the tale of two halves. I mean, the first half was just flat out ugly. I mean, it was dominant by Cincinnati. Ravens couldn't get out of their own way. Anthony Brown, the quarterback, struggled. But the second half, they kind of rallied back around. And in watching the game, you could get a feel for Zach Taylor being a little concerned, because having been in those games, when it's kind of one-sided and it's heading a certain way, you worry about the focus of your players getting a little diluted. And it looked like maybe that happened a little bit. But it's going to be an interesting game, not the least of which is just how healthy are the Ravens, the biggest question being Lamar Jackson, in bringing into this now the third time they're going to play one another.
What's your gut tell you, Brian? I know you don't have a crystal ball. You were around some of the Ravens people, maybe some conversations here, conversations there. What's your gut tell you about Jackson? Does he come back, you think, for the playoffs?
I'm not sure. I think there's some angst about it. I think maybe, and I don't know this, I have no way of knowing, no one's certainly going to share their confidences with me in the regard, but I think there's a little frustration. I think Lamar Jackson, and whether it's right or wrong, may be getting some advice of, look, you don't want to come back if you're not 100%. I mean, some quarterbacks with a knee injury can come back and still function within the pocket and do the things they need to do. But that's not Lamar Jackson. And I think he may be being advised, look, if you can't be Lamar Jackson, you don't want to come back and not look good and not execute well. Because that's just going to muddy the waters about this contract conversation after, and what that level of commitment is. So I think it has been strained a little bit. He has not practiced. And even if he does come back and do it with just the week, certainly he's a dynamic factor, but I don't know. I think there's we'll find out the rest of the story of that once the season's over, because I think there is some angst there now between he and the club.
Some of the Bengals defensive players commented after the game. They wouldn't name names. They wouldn't name exact situations, but felt or implied that the Ravens played dirty football yesterday. You were sitting there in the booth the whole game, but did you see anything that made you feel that was true or no?
No, not that and that's such a fine line, someone would have to define that for me. Passions get out of control sometimes. Sure, it's a physical rivalry. They started to chip away at each other just a little bit, and so certainly that can happen. And I imagine we're going to see that in the game this week as well, because it is a rivalry and they are familiar with one another. But I can't say I saw any incident where I thought it was a late shot or a cheap shot or anything of that nature.
I'm assuming, and maybe I shouldn't, that if for some reason Lamar Jackson can't come back this week, don't they? I mean, if the kid's healthy, Huntley has to be the guy, right? I mean, they can't trot Brown. God bless Brown. They can't trot him out there again on Sunday night, right, and have any hope to win that game.
No, that would be problematic. Now, the problem is Huntley, I don't think he is 100%. I think that tendonitis in his shoulder is an issue, and he can't put the ball down the field. So that becomes the dilemma. Do we put a Tyler Huntley in, who I think has played pretty well? He did last year and to a degree this year. But to put a Tyler Huntley in who can't push the ball down the field, that's a tougher question now. Are you better off with Anthony Brown, who at least has a strong arm and can do some things? But I think that would be problematic to say Brown's going to go in again. But if Tyler Huntley's not 100%, then he's not going to be effective either.
When you look at the rest of the opening round of the playoffs and the matchups, Brian, is there a game you find to be the most interesting? Look, I think that the Ravens-Bengals game is the most interesting game. I think the one that might get the most eyeballs on it might be on Monday night with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers playing against the Cowboys. Sure. Before I get to what you think would be the most interesting matchup of that opening round outside of the Bengals and Ravens, when you look at playing on a Monday night in the playoffs, and my understanding is last year was the first time that happened. If you're a head coach, look, you're in the playoffs and you're grateful and thankful and you're trying to win the whole thing, but is that a big deal having to play on Monday night and know you got to turn around and play on Saturday or Sunday the following week? Sunday, more than likely, I would assume.
I think so. I mean, we don't play a Monday night game at the end of the season because it may involve playoff teams, and you don't want to give, being a day short is a disadvantage to the two teams involved. And particularly the traveling team. The home team, you could kind of make the case, but for the traveling team. So, yeah, and I understand it. They want to stretch it out over the whole spectrum. And is it a huge deal? Is it a game changer? Probably not. As a coach, I would prefer not to do it and be interesting to see what teams they're picking to do that with. You talk about one of the most interesting games. I think the Ravens and the Bengals, hence that's why they're on the Sunday night game. Yeah, I think that is the most interesting matchup in this first weekend. I mean, they're all going to be interesting. The Giants and going into the Vikings, and are the Vikings for real? I heard you talking about the Chargers and the Jaguars. The fact that it's the Chargers, that West Coast to East Coast travel, I would agree that the Jaguars, which have been a great story. The Seahawks are the 49ers. 49ers are the real deal. But that again, interesting, the familiarity. That these two teams, they too, just like the Ravens and the Bengals, these two teams have faced each other twice. So now that whole dynamic. In fact, I don't think I'm wrong, but I think all of these teams have played one another, which is an interesting dynamic. You got the Dolphins, and the Bills that are in the division. So so you got a lot of teams, a lot of people that are that familiarity, which adds another dimension to it. Yeah, it makes it a very interesting wild card field.
Brian, you coached against, and certainly you've broadcast a lot of games that Pete Carroll has coached in. He won a national championship, a couple of them at USC. He's won a Super Bowl as a head coach in the NFL. I'm not so sure this year wasn't his best coaching job, maybe in his career, of any team he has ever coached. What is it about Pete Carroll that gets guys to play for? I mean, if somebody would have said Geno Smith's going to be your starter at the beginning of the year and you're going to the playoffs, somebody would have told you you're out of your mind, and yet here they are.
Yeah, I think first he's fundamentally an outstanding coach. He has a good staff and they stick to that fundamental. They stick to their plan in terms of the way they play defense, the complementary way that they want to play offense. They hit on a quarterback and within a system that I think fit Geno Smith. So they tailored, and he was a good fit. I'm not saying that they changed what they did, but they found that Geno Smith fit very well with the style of play that Pete Carroll wants to play. He's got a lot of energy, and as long as things are going good, the players are going to buy in, and they have that. He has some fun with it. and particularly in the role they're now. It's, hey, guys, we're on house money. Let's just go, let this thing go, man, and let's see what we can do. And playing a very familiar foe. So I would not disagree with you. With all the great years that Pete has had, this may be the best singular coaching job, because they're a good team. They're not an overly talented team, but going forward now, they're they had a great 22 draft, and they got a lot of picks going into this draft. They could load up, and this could get real interesting for the Seahawks going forward.
So now you're headed down to the Hula Bowl. What are you doing down there?
Well, Mike Smith and I are the head coaches. We faced each other last year. Mike Smith, of course, is my brother-in-law, former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. Great fun coaching these young players. A lot of the players, some back-end players, I think like 95% of the players we had last year went into an NFL camp. Not all drafted necessarily, but these are guys that the thing I enjoy about the game compared to some of the other all-star games, these players need this game. These players are players that aren't at the front end of the draft necessarily. I've got Sean Clifford from Penn State as one of my quarterbacks. I'm excited.
From Cincinnati, St. Xavier High School.
Yeah. And so there are a lot of guys like that. So I found last year these guys were very receptive, and they wanted to be there, and they wanted to play, compared to maybe some of the other all-star games. They just kind of go through the motions, and so it's going to be a fun. It's down in Orlando, and we play at UCF Stadium, and it's a fun week. So we've got a great group of coaches. Ted Cottrell's my defensive coordinator. Mike Tice is my offensive line coach. Kevin Sumlin's wide receiver coach. Ron Turner's going to coordinate on the other side. So it's a lot of good coaches, a lot of good information for these young players, a lot of experience for these kids to be around.
Brian, we have a couple people in our chat that want to know, what is that silver football over your left shoulder you have up there on the shelf? What is that, a Super Bowl replica trophy kind of thing?
Well, I say it's replica. What the Ravens don't know is I actually took the real thing and gave them the replica. No, it is. Someone gave that to me. That's great. That and the Emmy. Those are my two pride and joys.
Amen, buddy. Amen. Brian, thanks for the time. Any prediction on the TCU Horned Frogs v. Georgia tonight?
You asked me that before because I know your daughter goes to TCU. Last time I think I said Georgia. This time I'll say TCU.
Wow.
Because now I got a fit. Well, I'm just saying I got a 50-50 chance. When we do this next week, it'll be 50% of the people think I'm an idiot, and the other 50% think, depending on who heard what, that I know what I'm talking about.
All right, my friend. Thanks so much for your time. We'll catch up again next week.
Sounds good.
Brian Billick, kind enough to join us on his way down to the Hula Bowl. That's cool. Sean Clifford. That was a great ending to that story. Local kid here in Cincinnati, St. X High School. Went through a lot of ups and downs. Physically, performance during his, 5-6 years, I think it was, here at Penn State, right?
6 years.
Yeah, and he goes out by winning the Rose Bowl. That was a great story.
He's been there so long that Chase Wolf, who was at St. X after him, is now going to be a senior.
That's exactly right.
Think about that.
and he's coming back to play at Wisconsin.
At Wisconsin, yeah.
Yeah, we had Steve Wolf, his dad, on a couple of weeks ago, and we'll get him on later in the year to talk about the Xavier
Thom, do you want to spend any time here now on the national championship
tonight?
Let's
spend a little bit of time on the national championship game, boys. Let's start with Kendre Miller. He is 50-50, they say. Star running back for TCU. They have an outstanding backup who ran for 150 yards or so against Michigan. He did have a big fumble in that game, but nonetheless has gotten a lot of playing time during the season. Let's start with TCU on offense. Holy Moses. Oh, my gosh. Oh, hamstring. Up. Sniper, take the other picture. Seriously. Oh, my God. Hamstring, sniper. Oh, cramp. Oh. That's what happens when you miss a day of running, boys. That's what happens. You start breaking down as a 59-year-old. What the hell are you laughing at?
Are you okay?
Yeah,
I'm
serious. I just got a cramp in my hamstring, for God's sake.
I thought your chair broke.
No.
Oh.
My leg broke.
Oh, no.
Boy, that hurt. Hey, get your attention. Good morning.
I thought your chair gave out. One of the legs on your chair was just going.
Oh, my God, that hurt. Yeah, that's, when I missed a day of running yesterday and spent most of it drinking. So you start cramping up when you're 59.
You know what you need, Tom?
What's that?
You might need some of this.
This right here, I got it in front of me. The new premium alkaline water is Pani, P-A-H-H-N-I. Stuff is unbelievable, and hopefully it's going to heal his hamstring in a minute. They're right across the street here in Hamilton, Ohio. A bunch of former Procter & Gamble guys, a couple of them, putting this whole thing together. Pani uses natural limestone filtration, which is unlike artificial processing that many other brands use out there. The result is a healthy alkaline water, and we call it the best tasting water in the world. It is. Visit their website at paniwater.com. Again, that's P-A-H-H-N-I water.com to see where you can buy this great tasting water. I'm back on my game. That would have taken down most men my age, would have taken them down.
Tom, you know what you are?
The real man. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I'm sure I'm getting roasted in the chat. After that, yeah, so boy wonder, I thought he had my back. Boom Shakalaka says, Brennaman's a gamer. No doubt. Sniper! But back to the national championship game tonight before we get to Dan Hoard. Now, you can say that, it'd be a fact. I mean, Ohio State put up 40 on Georgia, and Georgia has been known for defense. Statistically, I know their defense is on par with the group they had last year, but it's not the same defense. It's still a really good defense. I think it's safe to say it's the best defense, although many said that about Michigan, because statistically, Michigan was right there among the top 3 or 4 defensive teams in the country. Now, there were 2 pick sixes in that game. What the hell are you laughing at? We're trying to have a conversation here.
He's still trying to compose himself here.
You got to get it together.
I just rewatched it. You're parallel with the crowd.
What?
You are parallel.
I am. I'm trying to straighten the thing out. My foot got caught in the little footrest underneath it, so I couldn't straighten out my leg to get rid of the cramp.
All right, go ahead. TCU, Georgia. We're back.
All right,
J.J. McCarthy threw 2 pick sixes in that game, if I remember right? So really, the TCU offense, Max Duggan struggled in that game, the quarterback of the Horned Frogs. He did not play a great game, but they won the game. Georgia's defense gave up 40 in a win to the team most people felt like was the best offensive team in the country in Ohio State. Let's start with TCU's offense. Can they score enough to win tonight against Georgia?
Well, if there's been one question about Georgia's defense, and I know Trace will talk about this more on a box lunch in a little bit, it's been the secondary, right? And I don't know. I mean, can Max Duggan go out there and do what he needs to do? Can he throw a couple of touchdowns? I don't know if 2's enough, though. I mean, this might be a high-scoring game.
To me, I think the issue is Georgia will have very easy control over the game.
Really?
Right? I mean, it's not even to me, it's not a question of whether TCU can score. It's whether or not TCU can slow them down. Right? I mean, Georgia is a different animal than Michigan, in my opinion. At least when it comes to quarterback play and having a consistent run game.
Here's what I will say, though, Tom, is you got to think back to this game against Michigan with TCU. Michigan made some really stupid mistakes that game. And Georgia and Kirby Smart will not make those mistakes. And I'm not necessarily saying they were Harbaugh's fault. I'm just saying that, 2-3 times Michigan had the ball inside the 10-yard line and didn't score? That doesn't happen. That's 21 points for Georgia right there that they left on the board. And if that happens, if Michigan scores those touchdowns, the entire game script is different, and that game potentially plays out much differently in terms of how much TCU even scores, because maybe they have to start forcing the issue and turning the ball over. So Michigan not scoring whatever it was 2 or 3 times inside the 10-yard line, that doesn't happen with Georgia. Georgia scores those touchdowns, and you would have thought that Michigan would have, but then they start running the Philly special and everything else. I just think that if that gets down to a situation tonight where Georgia's consistently knocking on the door, they're going to punch it in, and then it relies on Max Duggan. Can he come back the other way and
guy's a gamer,
make something happen? Yeah,
guy's a gamer, and he can run. He's going to have to throw it better in this game than he threw it last week.
Well, do you have a score prediction here?
Well, wait a minute. I want to find out what's the line and where's the money going, because that's been fluctuating a little bit, right?
Yeah, so it was at 12.5 for pretty much the entire – I'll pull up what it is.
Well, it came down from 13.5.
Yeah, it'd been up at 13.5. Then it was around 12.5 for pretty much the entire week. And now on Betfred, as I look at it, it was at 13 before the show. It may have jumped up even to 13.5. I'm going to look at it right now. NCAA football, it is at 13 on Betfred, but there are other places where it's 13.5.
All right, we're going by Betfred.
And we are going by Betfred, so that's 13 up from the 12.5. The money and the bets almost all week have been 85-ish. 85% on TCU.
TCU?
On the spread,
On the spread.
Oh, okay.
On the spread.
Okay.
Just in the last 12 hours, that has now flipped. 59% of the money is on Georgia, so the big money have come in very late. They kept waiting and waiting and waiting all week, and then now at the last minute, all the big money has come in on Georgia at 12.5, and it's bumped up to 13. So take that for what it's worth. I say 42-24 Georgia. That's my prediction.
42-24 Georgia.
That's Georgia in the over. That's what I say.
Casey, you've already said you think this is a Georgia manhandling of the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to what I think it would be. I don't know if I have got an exact score. I'm going to give TCU 28. I'm going to give Georgia 49.
Okay.
Yeah, 7 touchdowns in a row.
Okay.
Wow.
I'm disagreeing. Vehemently disagreeing.
Now,
the Horned Frogs pull it out 34-30.
God, that'd be electric.
They get a pick six somewhere. They get a strip sack and a fumble. Duggan's on his game. TCU dub. National champs year 1 of Sonny Dykes.
Well, I would love that.
Sonny Dykes?
Leader of men. That's exactly right.
God,
leader of men.
That'd be electric.
Yeah,
if
that would
TCU
be
won
a
this game.
great championship.
You know, I hope it's a good game. You know, I mean, you just hope it's an exciting game. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything more than the 2 semifinal games, right? I mean, as good as it gets. And normally, historically, in the college football playoff era, the semifinal games have been blowouts. And that was not the case this year. Each came down to literally the final play, figuratively, the final play of the game to determine a winner. Yeah. But you boys don't see that tonight. Got to tell you, pal.
No, I think Georgia wins. Maybe TCU does keep it closer and inside the number at 13, but I just don't see Georgia losing this game. Yeah, because I don't see Georgia making the mistakes to let TCU win the game that Michigan made, which is what it's going to take for TCU to win this game.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as I want TCU to win, like I would love to see that.
Yep.
I just can't picture. There's not a scenario. The Georgia team is just too well coached. Well, they don't make very many mistakes.
True.
Yeah, that's just what it really boils down to. They expose other people for their mistakes and keep their mistakes really low.
Bill Belichick has just made it known that he plans to return for his 24th season.
Wow.
As head coach of the New England Patriots. Patriots got to go get a quarterback. I'm sorry.
You think that it's a quarterback issue?
I think it is. I think they need a guy who is look, Mac Jones, they get to the playoffs. You know, they had a chance for the playoffs yesterday. They got there, I think, last year, right?
Yep.
They got eliminated in the first round.
By the Bills.
That's going to be what they are moving forward. And that division is not getting easier. Tell you, there are a lot of teams out there where the quarterback situation is going to be very, very interesting in the offseason. Derek Carr is out there. Is Tom Brady going to be out there? Is Lamar Jackson going to be out there? And if they are out there, where are they going? Could you see reuniting Bill Belichick and Tom Brady.
No. I think that chapter's done.
Speaking into existence, Tom.
Be the biggest story in the NFL by far. For years, it'd be the biggest story in the NFL. They got to do something. Told you Lovie Smith was fired. And by the way, the play last night in the Green Bay game, it was ugly. Quay Walker, linebacker for the he's a rookie for the Packers, and he was ejected from the game on sportsmanlike conduct when he shoved a member of the Lions medical staff who was tending to the injured running back DeAndre Smith on the playing field. Walker took full ownership today, came out, tweeted for his apology. He said, I reacted off of my emotions again and take full responsibility of making another stupid decision. Since then, I've questioned myself on why I did what I did. When the trainer was just trying to do his job, I was wrong. So it's nice that he at least apologized. It was a bonehead play, but you give it up to the kid. And he's a kid, 22 years old. Bad mistake. Yep. But not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. Doesn't mean he's a bad or evil guy. He just made a mistake. Nobody got hurt. And he's apologized for it. We got Dan Hoard coming up here shortly to talk more about the Bengals. What do they do if Kappa can't play? Any reaction, fellas, to the – go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, do you want to roll through our picks here real quick?
Oh, you know what? You're right. We got to do the picks.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go.
So this was the record going –
Brought to you by Betfred.
Brought to you by Betfred. This was the hold on. I'm going to change the sponsor logo here. This was the record going into the weekend right here.
Right, where I was on quite a roll.
Quite a roll.
And it trimmed it down to 6. I thought it was closer than that.
Here we go. No, that's what it was. I didn't change. I haven't changed anything.
All right. So let's go.
First one, Chiefs and Raiders. Tom, you're a winner.
Chiefs.
Big.
Raiders, by the way, stink.
Yeah.
I mean, they are really bad. And one thing I want to try to ask Brian Billick about sometime is this is another year where for like 20 straight years, the Raiders are among the most penalized teams in all of football, if not the most penalized team. It was embarrassing watching them play in that game on Saturday. That's not NFL football. I mean, they had guys quit on plays and weren't trying to make tackles. It was awful. Go ahead.
All right, Titans and Jags.
Jags
win but don't cover. Tom, you're a winner.
Wow. I have a feeling it's going south here soon.
Not so bad, though.
Bills.
You're 3-0.
3-0.
Bills win big.
Bills.
Casey.
I am 0-3 right now.
Oh, boy.
But Casey's going to make up some ground here real quick.
That's why I say it's about to go south.
Jets and Dolphins. We all went Dolphins. And in a game that there was no touchdowns, Dolphins cover.
Are you going to tell...
Terrible football. Go ahead.
We'll save that for another story.
Save it for Thursday.
All right.
Browns and Steelers. Tom, you switched your pick trying to make up some ground.
I did.
Got bit by the Browns.
Yes, I did. Not a surprise.
Because they stink.
They're going to be better next year.
Giants and Eagles. Tom, you and I took a shot on the huge spread. That was I should have stuck to my guns all year. I've not done this. And Eagles by 6.
That was that late touchdown in that game.
Yes.
It's right there on the edge.
But even still, they were only down 13.
Yeah, you're right. I understand.
Yeah.
All right.
Rams and Seahawks. Man, I thought this game might end up. I thought the Seahawks might punch it in there at the end and we could at least push this. But no.
Boy, Casey's making a late charge.
Mm-hmm. And then here's the big kicker.
Boy. Casey, see, he's been with the Lions since week 1.
He has.
The fighting Chris Spielmans.
He has. And the last one.
Bengals.
The Bengals.
Cover.
We sang the song and they still cover. 8th straight week. They won and covered.
And that's 8 straight wins for the Bengals.
Yeah.
I did not mention that at the beginning.
So here we go.
Okay.
Here's where we stand.
Oh, boy. Why in the world did you put Casey above me? We have the same record. If for nothing else, just for, visual, come on. He was in 3rd last week. Because he has a better record this week, you put him in second?
I went alphabetical order.
Okay, fair enough. All right. We will make our picks Friday for the playoff games. We're going to wait on the Monday game till Monday night. Okay?
Are we picking
because
this?
you got to wait and see who's – because there'll be updated injury reports.
Are we picking the championship? We should.
Oh, we have to pick the championship.
All right,
We should
Let's
probably
start right
do.
now. We already know where we're going. You guys have made it clear.
All right.
All right, you guys are taking – and our final line, Paul, according to Betfred, is 13.
13 is what we're going to stick at.
13 is the line. We're declaring it right now.
Are we making this a bigger deal because we're starting to run out of games? Is this going to be the multiplier?
We got plenty of games.
Yeah, we got the whole
plenty
NFL
of games.
postseason left.
We got plenty of games.
I see Casey wanted to make up
I
some
mean, we
ground.
got 5 this week and now 6 if you include this game, right?
Yeah.
As a national championship. Okay, there's 6. Following weekend, we're going to be down to 4 games, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or no?
5, right? No, because they have the
We're at 6.
public
and
math
then,
here.
That's
And then
not
it goes
a good
to
idea.
4. It goes 6, 4.
Yeah.
We're talking about probably about 15 games.
That's
left.
right. So we're okay.
Okay, we're
We're
good.
okay. All right. So I'm the only one, just to make sure we're all on the record with this now.
Yes.
I am the only one of the 3 going with the Horned Frogs. Go Frogs tonight, right?
Give it to us one more time, Tom.
Go Frogs. Sonny Dykes, leader of men. Dub tonight. Not only covering, that's a dub tonight.
We'll see.
You guys have been doubting the TCU. Who was the one talking about the Horned Frogs about week 4 of the college football season after they shellacked Oklahoma? Who it turned out Oklahoma was not their normal Oklahoma. But when they put up like 40-something on them in the first half, and that was a game where Sonny Dykes said he walked in that locker room and he expected to see a lot of guys celebrating and already, counting it as a win. Said the team was unbelievably focused. He said the following week they're playing Kansas State. Conversely, they are down big at halftime. Said he walked in the locker room, thought he'd see some guys hanging their head. Said nope, they were all focused. He said those 2 games, he knew that they had the potential for something special. And for Stetson Bennett, I mean, you think of all the great quarterbacks, the Heisman Trophy winners, all the guys in the college football playoff era. And that's going back to 2014. We only have one more year where that's going to be 4 teams, and we go to 12 teams, I guess, the following year. But Stetson Bennett, of all the quarterbacks that have played in the college football era, okay, he has a chance to do something not a single one of them has ever done. And that's win back-to-back national championships. This guy coming out of high school wasn't recruited by anybody. He played at a junior college. He was a preferred walk-on at Georgia. He becomes a starter last year. They got that great defense, but he made plays when he had to make plays. He did the same thing coming back from behind 14 against Ohio State in the fourth quarter to beat them in the semis. It's an amazing story.
It really is. I really wanted him to win the Heisman, too. Max Dugan.
You wanted Max to win it, or you wanted the other guy to win it?
You know what I will say? Go ahead, Casey.
No, I really wanted Max Dugan to win.
Tom.
Well, someone and his brother Max Duggan to win.
Duggan, Dugan, whatever. Same thing. Same thing.
Okay.
I will say something.
So if I call you Casey McAllister, it's the same thing?
I've been called McAllister my whole life.
I believe it.
Something that makes me very nervous about this game. Uga's not traveling.
Really?
Makes me very
Why not?
nervous. He's old.
He is old.
He's like 8, and that's old.
Yeah. Yeah. They, and I mean that they've been through the years some other Ugas. I think this is like Uga 8
9.
or 9. Yeah,
He's
I was going to say 8 or 9. Yeah.
And those dogs, they live like 8 to 10 years. So Uga is up there, man. A cross-country trip would not do our good boy very well.
Well, I just
It makes me
I hope and
nervous.
pray for the old boy.
It makes me
because
nervous.
We all love our animals. We hope Ugg is okay. I have a feeling Ugg is living a pretty good life.
Ugga looked tired at the semifinal.
I look tired every day of this show. Some would say the show's tired. Yeah. Boom Shakalaka says, Jimmy Duggan. All right, I'm just double checking. Some AJ says Ugg has gotten a little heavy. And no nudicles for Ugga.
Surprised you're not going to be out there, Thom.
You know, I this is one of those moments as a dad. You feel like in some ways, you wrestle with this kind of thing. And I mentioned I have a daughter that's in college down there at TCU and loves it. She's a sophomore there, and I mean it's an unbelievable place. And we were thinking about going to the semifinal game, but we were already down in Florida. And now here's a championship game out in L.A. You start with having to work, right? I got to be here tomorrow. Could have left probably today. But when you start looking at the finances of the thing, I really don't know who the people are that are able to go to these games. I mean, look, I've made a lot of money in my life. I mean, there was a time, just a couple of years ago. But from Cincinnati, you're paying about $1,400 minimum round trip for an airline ticket from here to L.A., right? Yep. Your choices aren't that great. And the amazing thing is, even if you don't go direct, which there is a direct flight, I think there's one a day, but even if you're doing the whole stop thing, you're not getting any break on the price. At SoFi Stadium, the best seat you're going to get where you can differentiate between players and ants in the upper deck is another $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, $1,500, right? Then you're going to have to Uber everywhere. Because last year there were stories about the parking at SoFi for the Super Bowl where they were asking for $200, $300, $400, $500 to park.
Wow.
Right? So you're Ubering everywhere where you know what they're going to do, right? You would too if you owned Uber. You're going to jack up the prices on that deal, right? Then you go in a hotel. I mean, that is potentially a $10,000 trip for two people to go to that game. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Would you spend that money, Paul, if Xavier was in the national championship game?
Yes.
You'd spend $10,000.
If you had it, you would spend $10,000.
It would take a lot for me to not go to a Xavier national championship game. It would take
well, you would go. You would get to go, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would. I mean, not to sound like I'm sitting here on a high horse, but I feel pretty confident that if Xavier was playing in the national championship, I would be in there. But if it meant in this scenario having to figure out a way as a fan to get there, yeah, I would be there.
The Super Bowl tickets. I tried to look at Super Bowl tickets, look at flights, everything.
Boom shakalaka over getting a ring for your girl. Well, she went to Xavier too, so she would be there with me.
Hey, by the way, speaking of tickets and ticket prices and everything, now I've not heard anything on the flip side, and I'm sure there is a flip side, but I talked to a lot of people who bought their tickets for that Bengals-Bills game, and apparently, whether it was Ticketmaster or whomever, right? I mean, they refunded people right now.
Yeah.
For that game.
People did get their money back for that, yeah.
Yeah, I actually went to that game with my best man and he got his back really fast.
Well, I heard they gave some an option, and maybe where you bought it is different. But I heard they gave you the option of they'd either give you the money back minus the whatever fees were involved, right? Or you could take all of that money, fee money included, plus some kind of additional amount of money, to apply it to a ticket of an event at a later date. Did you guys hear that?
I did not.
That's what I heard.
I did not.
I know a friend of mine that's happened with him.
Did he take that deal?
He did. He took that. Yep. He took that.
I'll be going to the playoffs this Sunday.
You're going?
You're going, or you mean there's not another big
what?
Chatterbox event?
You're going? Yeah.
No, this is not Chatterbox sanctioned. This is me and my best man and my future wife, my fiance. We're gonna go to 226, so we're gonna be right above where we were.
Wow. All right. Good for you, Casey. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I will say this: the tickets were extremely cheap. They were only $170.
Oh man, when'd you get them?
226. Like
no. When did you get them?
Oh, like yesterday, right after the game, he messaged me and said, "Hey, are you in?" And I said,
okay.
"Yeah, we're in." For $170. Have you seen the prices now?
Yeah, I didn't look until after they announced it was Sunday Night Football. So.
All right, fellas, we're going to take a break real quick. Dan Hoard said he ran a little.
No, he's here.
He's here? Okay. All right,
if you want to go to
All right, okay. Well, let's get right to Dan Hoard. He's been scrambling around already on this Monday morning, despite the fact that he had a lot going on yesterday. Obviously, the Bengals game. Dan, your overall impression, thanks for your time as always. We were talking earlier, I'm curious from your point of view, it looked like there was a lot of sort of vanilla poking and prodding kind of thing by both teams, knowing they more than likely were going to meet again this week. Did you feel that way broadcasting the game?
Definitely after the Bengals took the 17-0 lead. I thought they really went vanilla at that point, and it showed. They had 10 drives after that. They kicked 1 field goal, 7 punts, a lost fumble, a 4th and 1 where they didn't get the first down. So the offense was pretty lousy for the last 10 drives. I do think they went vanilla, and I hope that's the reason why they performed so poorly after getting off to a fast start.
Well, I mean, Joe Burrow admitted he missed some throws, and he had a couple of touchdown throws that he missed, and we never see Burrow do that. And he's proven in college and in the pros in a short amount of time that the bigger the stage, the better he is. I want to start, though, with Alex Kappa. Is this potentially another guy who's gone for the rest of the year, or at least another week?
I would be shocked if he could play this week based on how things looked and how the guy sounded after the game. My fear is that it's for the rest of the playoffs. And, man, the timing could not be worse. They made it through 15 games where the same 5 guys started, all 15 on the offensive line. The right tackle goes down against the Patriots, La'el Collins, and now the right guard goes down in the final game of the regular season against Baltimore. So the notion of having Max Sharping and Hakeem Adeniji next to each other, really for the first time to open postseason play, is a rough way to go into the playoffs, to say the least.
What's your confidence level of these guys? I mean, Adeniji, there was talk he was not even going to start 2 weeks ago, that they were going to bring Isaiah Prince back in there. They decided to go with Adeniji. In the 2 games that you've seen him, well, really a game and less than a quarter, to be fair, he did play a lot last year. What's your confidence level? What are his strengths?
He's got good feet. He's a good athlete. He's got short arms, unfortunately, for the tackle position, which is why they tried him at guard last year. I do think he's played better at tackle than he did last year at guard. I think he's been okay in the games that he's played, because he played most of that New England game after La'el Collins went down. So I think he's been all right, adequate, certainly not as good as LC. As for Max Sharping, at least he's played a lot before. Yeah. He had 33 starts with the Houston Texans, so at least you're not plugging in a guy who's going to be overwhelmed. He's got a lot of experience. He's a sharp guy. It's part of his last name, but that's kind of his reputation. He's certainly going to know what he's doing out there, but Alex Kappa was their best offensive lineman this year. So if he is, in fact, done for the postseason, that would be a huge blow.
I asked Brian Billick a little while ago, Dan. He was filling in. You probably saw him yesterday up in the press box level, calling the game for Ravens radio. And he's proven over years and years and years that he doesn't see things necessarily through purple-colored glasses, so to speak. I asked him if he thought there was some dirty play by the Ravens on offense yesterday. Those were some of the comments, without naming names or particular situations, that were coming out of the Bengals locker room yesterday. From where you sat broadcasting the game, did you feel like there was some extra stuff going on there?
I didn't see anything specific, but there was a lot of post-play pushing and shoving that was happening throughout the game. So it's always hard to tell who starts it when that's the case. But the Bengals don't speak out the way they did after this game. And I thought Jay Morrison had some really good comments from the players in his story in The Athletic this morning. They don't speak out like that unless something happened. So, again, I didn't specifically see it. It's hard to see stuff like that when you're watching the game from press box level. But I have no doubt that it happened based on how candid the Bengals players were in talking about it after the game.
You know, somebody made the point, Dan, I'm curious if you agree with this. Someone made the point that John Harbaugh must believe that the Ravens are better than the Bengals by the sheer fact that they had a chance to get a home playoff game, depending on the coin flip, and they won yesterday. But he comes into Cincinnati knowing all that's on the line. He sits down Dobbins. He sits down Andrews. He sits down Zeitler. And we know Lamar Jackson's not in there. But he still feels like, okay, you know, we're not conceding the game, but we might be kind of conceding the game. And we'll take our chances with that team next week with everybody back. You buy that at all?
Not at all. I don't know how you would take one and come to the conclusion that John Harbaugh thinks that the Ravens are better. I think that the guys we're talking about have some sort of injury or have overcome injury during the course of the year, which is the case with J.K. Dobbins. He's only been back for 4 games after missing a chunk of the season. So I think between players on the Ravens team that didn't want to play because they're dealing with injuries, you know, in Lamar Jackson's case, it's hard to tell what's going on there. They don't seem to know in Baltimore. He's missed the last 5 games. So I didn't take it that way at all, that John Harbaugh thought his team is better than Cincinnati. I think that he's trying to put his team in the best possible position to pull off an upset next week.
I'm curious, Dan, and you work for the team. I always preface my comments before I ask you certain questions when it comes to do with the franchise itself. I thought Katie Blackburn did a marvelous job going to bat for this franchise and that whole owner's vote last week. Clearly, Zach Taylor, who you rarely see sort of step out of the diplomatic mode. He's a very diplomatic, close to the vest kind of guy, but clearly he was very upset about the rules that were changed here right before the playoffs. There's nothing you can do about it now, but you know, does he made the comment that it shows that ownership is fully in support of the plight of the coaches and the players and all that kind of thing. Did you get that feeling it trickled down from top to bottom after last Friday?
Sure, because Katie's on that committee and she fought very hard for the NFL not to just randomly change the rules. Randomly is the wrong word, but you know what I'm saying. The NFL does not make rule changes a week before the playoffs. Everything is considered. Everything is discussed, and then they make rule changes in the offseason. And that's what the Bengals were fighting for. The rules already existed for the potential of some teams playing a different number of games than other teams. Those rules are written in the book. You can read them online. It's available on the NFL website. So that's the Bengals' contention. And there was a scenario where the Bengals could have benefited if they had wound up playing a neutral site AFC Championship game against Kansas City. So there was one tiny sliver of a chance that the change that the NFL made last week could have helped them out, but that wasn't their point. Their point is, you ask us to follow every other rule in the book, and now because of this situation, you are changing the rules in a way that most likely could hurt us. So that was their bone of contention. I think the coaches and players appreciated the fact that Katie did everything in her power to try to make sure that the NFL didn't do that.
All right, Dan, I want to ask you this before I let you go. You watch this team play every single game for years and years and years. We know what they did last year. They had a home playoff game against the Raiders, had to go on the road and beat Tennessee, go on the road and beat Kansas City. Here you have the Ravens on Sunday night. In theory, you'd have to go to Buffalo. You'd have to go to Kansas City. When you compare the two teams last year and what is facing potentially this team this year, Which one is a tougher road? The one they faced last year or the one they're potentially facing this go-round?
Well, the opponents would be more difficult this year. Not necessarily in the first playoff game, but going on the road to Buffalo, to me, seems much more challenging than going on the road last year to Tennessee when Derrick Henry hadn't played for an extended period of time, and the Titans were not that great anyway. They were good. Obviously, they battered Joe Burrow in the course of that game, but last year's Tennessee team as a number 1 seed is not as good as this year's Buffalo team as a number 2 seed. Kansas City, I think it's about the same last year as this year. So I guess the big difference would be the second game if the Bengals are fortunate enough to win on Sunday night and if Buffalo takes care of business against Miami.
All right, Danny, as always, thanks for your time. I know you're crazy busy with everything going on with UC basketball now and into the Bengals, but you will be there on Sunday night, my man. It's a big-time game. Good luck to you, and thanks for your time, buddy.
Yeah, my pleasure. Sorry I was a little bit late. Look forward to joining you again.
Come on, we're grateful to have you. Thank you so much, Dan Hoard, voice of the Bearcats, voice of the Cincinnati Bengals, who will start their playoff run, boys, Sunday night.
I'm excited.
The Baltimore Ravens.
What's your gut reaction right now, Tom, to the Bengals win on Sunday?
My gut reaction is yes, but I got to tell you, I'm a little worried about this game. And I haven't been worried about a Bengals game in a while. They're playing that well and have been playing that well. They've won 8 in a row, and they've looked great doing it. But I am very, very worried about this game Sunday night. I think the Ravens, I brought up earlier about your divisional opponents. I think the Ravens are playing with a major chip on their shoulder. You could say the Bengals are too because of the rules that were changed last Friday. The Bengals now potentially are facing Baltimore, a good, solid Baltimore defense. Not a great defense, but a solid defense without potentially 2, for sure 1, maybe 2 starting offensive linemen. Could make the argument their best 2 starting offensive linemen once the season got going. Collins was playing very well. He goes down against New England. Now Kappa, who's played great all year long. That leaves you with Karras. That leaves you with the rookie Bolsom at left guard. And then you got Jonah at left tackle. And look, are these 2 guys potentially good players? Adeniji? Yes. Sharping started 33 games with Texas. I don't know what that means, except he has a lot of experience. I think Lamar Jackson is going to show up this week. Andrews will be back. Dobbins will be back. Zeitler will be back. I'm a little concerned. Casey, I'm assuming you're not.
I'm still believing that the team will win. I just checked some of the grades on PFF. They just released some of them. Max Sharping actually was the highest graded lineman. I know that was he only had 14 snaps, it says here, so not much to grade off of, but he played well when he had to step in. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'm nervous about is I just don't want to see another playoff run where Joe Burrow is running for his life. I mean, we got to have some offensive power, right? Like, our defense is, I'm not too worried about the defense. This game in particular, I'm not worried about. I'm already looking to the future. I shouldn't do that. But to answer your question, the buzzer should have already went off at this point. I'm not worried, but I think this is going to be a very grinded out, tough match. And that usually leads to lots of bumps and bruises. So,
well, if that is the case, and I think we all agree, I still maintain, I don't know what, and again, it's hard to put a lot of stock in the game yesterday, and especially the play calling in the second half, as Dan brought up. I just don't see the Bengals being able to run the ball anymore. They cannot turn into this team and expect to win with the weather and the conditions they're going to face. You can't sling it around 45 times in a game. And 3/4 of the time, they're going empty backfield, 5 receivers, and when they try to run it, they barely ever run it well. I think that's a concern. You worried about the game?
I'm a little concerned, but I'm not all that worried.
All right.
I do think they get it done. I'm more concerned about playing the Ravens than I would be against the Chargers or the Jaguars. I think that this is a game that the Ravens absolutely can win. And I think you're going to see a lot of people bet on the Bengals, and I think that it's going to end up being a game where the Ravens are going to come down to it, and they're going to have a shot. But, again, I go back to what I said earlier about the first time the Bengals and the Ravens played each other this year, where I think the Bengals very much could have won that game and probably should have won that game. And 2 weeks in a row, I know there's a lot that's going to be different about this Sunday than yesterday, but I still just have this gut feeling that Cincinnati gets it done.
I got to tell you, I started this regular season by hammering Zach Taylor, and specifically what he did with the offensive line, or more accurately, did not do with the offensive line in the preseason. And they were brutal the first 2 games of the year. Both losses. They win one of those 2 games, they might be sitting on the number 1 seed right now in the playoffs, and they'd be off this week. But, and after some very questionable play calling, especially in that first game against Baltimore, the nonsense down inside the 5, shovel pass to a guy who hadn't touched the ball all year long on 4th down, where they get stopped, should have won that game. But I will say this. When you look back over the course of this year, and he's put together an outstanding staff, the offensive line coach, Anarumo, the defensive coordinator. They went through the death of an assistant coach in Adam Zimmer. Zach Taylor is starting to win me over a little bit, and that's saying something, because I've not been a big Zach Taylor guy. Now, I'm not all in, but I'm saying he has shown me some things, especially when it comes to stepping up and having something to say. Some of the stuff he did with that Gladiator video over the weekend, I love stuff like that. If you didn't see that story, dropped guys' heads in there like from the scenes of different portions of Gladiator, right?
Yeah.
You know, some people think that stuff's hokey. That's fine. I think if you're a coach and you're trying to find an edge for your team, Zach Taylor has done a hell of a job with this team this year. Kept them focused. When Chase went down, they went, 3-1 without Chase?
Yep.
Yeah. The only one that was the last game they lost was against Buffalo. Or, against Cleveland. Haven't lost since.
So, I got to say, he has, in some of our chat, those in the chat, feel the same way, I think, as I do about Zach Taylor. He's shown a different side of himself than maybe he was allowing himself to show for the rest of us. The players and the staff clearly saw that side of him. But now we're starting to see a side of him where, he wasn't afraid to take on the NFL. You got to love stuff like that, right? You got to love it. His owner of the franchise went to bat for the team, and then Taylor backed it right back up in his press conference about the rules that were changed and following the rules, and we're following the rules, and you tell us to follow the rules, and then you change the rules. But now all that's old news, boys. It's time to tee them up. It's a lot like tonight in college football's national championship game. Reed Mouse is wearing the Chatterbox Sports sweatshirt.
Yeah.
And our leader of men, Trace Fowler, has let us down with that so tired, Georgia Bulldog nonsense. How can a man be a Georgia Bulldog fan, a Kansas basketball fan, and a Green Bay Packer fan for a guy who grew up right down the street? How is that possible, Paul? Do you see anything at all that is interwoven of those 3 teams? If there's one common thread they have, the Georgia Bulldogs, the Green Bay Packers, notwithstanding the loss last night, but historically speaking, especially since Trace has been old enough to figure out who he's going to root for. Do you see anything in there that is woven? Is there one word that comes to mind? Maybe it's 2 words. I'm not sure. But is there one word that comes to mind? And oh, by the way, Kansas basketball has been pretty good for about 100 years. So anything common?
I think Google is saying that it's one word.
It is.
I think it's one word.
You know what the word is.
I know what the word is.
What is it?
Front runner.
Thank you.
Hyphenated? Is it one word?
No,
it's just one
it
word?
says front runner emerges for number 1 transfer, and it's one word unhyphenated.
Speaking of letting them down, Tom, Trace let you down yesterday. We had an extra ticket to the game sitting there in the end zone. We had this empty seat sitting right there, and we're like, where's Tom? Everyone was wondering, where's Tom?
Well, you know, when you get the invitation, everybody else is dancing around here on Wednesday and Thursday about you guys all going to the game, and you, by the way, were there too.
I was.
All right. And then all of a sudden, I get some random text from Trace on a Friday when I sent him, my thoughts and prayers about Bentley, his dog. And, oh, by the way, we got an extra ticket for you.
Oh, that was a pity invite.
It really was.
It was.
It was only because I humiliated him, or at least someone who was responsible for sending out the invitations, that, Casey, did you go?
Yeah, I went.
With Chatterbox.
Yeah.
Paul?
Yeah, I was there with Chatterbox.
Brandon? Yes. Heads up. Mustache still going strong. You've acknowledged you were there.
Right next to me was an open seat.
Okay,
we just sat right next to Tom.
So what is again, you want to look up? Is there a word? This is 2 words, according to Google, that would pertain to this situation. So there's Casey, there's Paul, there's Brandon, there's Reed, there's Trace. And then there's me. And you know what the next 2 words are? Left out. Those are 2 different words. That's not one word. It's okay. All right, do we have a cherry on top?
We do.
We do.
Okay.
Play the
Brought
hits.
to you by United Dairy Farmers. What is it?
Play the hits.
Tom?
Yes. Oh, Lord, what the hell's going on over there? All right, yes, what is it?
Today's cherry on top.
Yeah.
Is just a celebration.
Yes, good stuff.
Do it.
Ah, yeah.
Look at this guy.
The real
Smoking
man.
cigars. Look at that. We're celebrating. AFC North champs, baby.
AFC North champs. First time since the 1980s and only the second time in franchise history. Conquered the AFC North.
You a Stogie guy, Tom?
Every now and again, why not?
I like one.
Smoke them if you got them.
Do you have a brand of choice?
No, the cheap kind you buy. I'm not going to spend any money on a
Not
cigar.
those
Are
highfalutin.
you?
No, gosh, no.
No? Okay.
I care about my lungs too
The
much.
cheap kind. Or not at all.
No, never.
Not at all.
Reed
Trace?
was offered a cigar one time by Joe Mixon. Turned it down.
Joe Mixon offered you and you turned it down?
Yeah, so here's a fun story. So I was driving into Party Source right there in Tracy Jones' hometown, Bellevue, Kentucky.
Yep.
And I'm pulling in, and I see this tall guy. And I was like, is that Joe Mixon? And, of course, me being a Bengals fan, I followed him around Party Source for a good 5 minutes.
Sure,
and I was
absolutely.
like, all right, I need to leave. Let him shop. So I go get my thing. We're checking out. He's bought like 200 cigars, and they're ringing them up one at a time. He's not buying boxes. He's buying individual cigars.
You're
and they're
kidding me.
Just ringing them up. And I, make the joke. I'm sitting right behind him. I was like, you buying those for all the rookies? And he looks at me, and he goes, nah, just for the boys back at the crib. And then he hands me one. He's like, you like cigars? These are my favorite. And he hands me one. And I look at it. And for some reason, it didn't click in my mind that he was offering me a cigar. He puts it in my hand and said, these are my favorite. And I look at it, inspected it, and said, yeah, it looks pretty good. And handed it right back to him. I turned down a cigar that Joe Mixon was offering me just because.
And then Bengals lost the Super Bowl.
Then they did lose the Super Bowl. That's on me.
Not good. Not good.
It's on me.
It is on you. It is on. Maybe you can go stalk him. I think that's the word they're using in the chat. You could stalk him again if they can blow through the AFC again. Yes, Paul?
Cardinals just fired Cliff Kingsbury.
You knew that was coming. You know it was coming. We'll get into this tomorrow. But we talked about this before the first game of the year when that whole contract situation with Kyler Murray came up. How that thing got leaked out, I don't know. But you may remember it was in his contract where clearly they were questioning some of his commitment to try and get better and how much time he was spending in the film room or not spending in the film room. It ended up getting out. And then the whole debacle by everybody involved, the franchise, Murray, Kingsbury, Keim, their general manager. Did he survive? The general manager?
I don't know.
Been a lot of talk about him. He's had some health problems this year.
Tom, we're going to give you a chance to change your pick. Lance Miller's reported in our chat that Andy Dalton's going to be giving the pep talk to TCU before they storm the field and try to take on Georgia in the national championship. Do you want to change your pick?
I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. I'm not. Because I'm rooting for TCU, and I love Andy Dalton.
I love Andy, too.
Yeah.
If you offered me a cigar, I'd take it.
Andy Dalton instead of Joe Mixon?
I'm just teasing.
Okay. All right. Well, it's time for box lunch, gentlemen. Schmoin flip. What's that mean?
Coin flip, schmoin flip. Forget about it. Doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, that's Reader's take on the coin flip situation. I still have a little bit of a grudge with the coin flip situation.
Yeah.
Obviously, the good news is as you've pointed out, of all of these teams that I'm fans of, one is not some of the local teams. So there's, I think that I can hold an opinion without becoming a homer, which, again, I do live in Cincinnati, so there's going to always be those folks that'll say he's just saying that because he's from there or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do think the coin flip was a debacle on Friday. I believed in a lot of Casey's points. I don't know if Casey made his points maybe as eloquently as I would like to have made them, but he was very passionate and he was very, very topical, and I thought it was a good show.
Yep.
But not that people care about who I root for, but we've gone down this path before, and I know some of this is a bit.
And we'll continue.
But when you grow up in a household where your stepdad's dad, so your step grandfather and your step uncle, played at the University of Georgia and also played for the Green Bay Packers, you don't have much of a choice when you grow up on who to watch. As far as Kansas goes, that one is probably my front runner team. I just like Kern Heinrich and Nick Collison when I was for lack of a better term, a little white kid running around trying to be a basketball player at the time. And I idolized those two guys. So I just started following their career, and then all of a sudden, you started liking the players because they graduated, and it just kind of stuck. So those are the kind of the realities. I'm still stuck with the Reds. And if I could find a way to where some of my relatives could possibly play for another franchise from time to time, I wish that was the case. But that's not it. So here I am. I'm stuck as a Reds fan. But as far as the ticket goes, I'm not going to stand for that. Here's why. Because I did have a ticket for you the whole time. I had heard on the Thursday show that you said that you were going to the game. So I said,
here we go.
No. I had heard you said you were already going to the game. So I was like, oh, shit. Okay, well, I guess we're going to have to figure out something with Tom's ticket.
Here we go.
But before I offered the ticket to someone else, I sent you a text and said, would you like it? And you just completely ignored it, which is fine.
Think about
Is that true? Is that true? Did you ignore an invitation to the game?
It was one of those deals where you knew it was like the girl who's invited late to the prom. You knew what the deal was, and you just kind of took it and you move on.
Here I felt bad for you because I thought you didn't get invited.
I said he invited me after the fact. I admitted that from the very start of this conversation.
Blowing him off when we had a ticket for you, Tom.
That's right. After it had been documented. Have we mentioned, by the way, before we get to these guys, because it wouldn't be off the bench without mentioning Discord.
Discord, baby, it's popping.
Is this your idea, Reed? Discord?
No, it's not. But it's good stuff, Tom. We need you in there.
All right.
Tom, you do like the chat so much that I think that one of two things could happen with Discord. You get it, you're like, okay, from time to time I'll pop in there. Or the worst case scenario is you get hooked. And you're like, I got to get into Discord.
I got you.
I got to start checking out what everybody's thinking and saying. I got to give some people some thoughts from time to time. I will say I've been incredibly cold in the Discord on my picks. The coldest I've ever been. Which, hey, it's all irrelevant because tonight I am putting an absolute responsible amount, of course, but a ridiculous amount on Georgia.
All right. Well, that's where this part of our program comes to an end, and we start a beginning.
Yep.
And the only thing we can say is, as we send it to box lunch, Go Frogs!
I must admit, I didn't think much of this show the first time I laid eyes on it. Seemed like a bunch of stiffs wasting nice
Worst trade
microphones.
of all time happened back in 1803. Go ahead. Napoleon Bonaparte traded the Louisiana Purchase for $3 million. Napoleon, what happened? Half the country for $3 million. You can't even get Tucker Barnhart for $3 million.
Then I came to realize these guys are funny.
And Justin Fields have identical stats the last 5 weeks about throwing the football. This guy, okay,
And
folks,
are
is a
some of the
fidget
best
spinner.
gamblers I've come to know.
If you're betting on USC and or TCU, let it be known you are a square.
TCU is going to hammer this team tomorrow night.
And I hate to hear that.
Tomorrow
When we come back
afternoon.
in here on Monday, you're going to be happy as a lark because USC lost, but you're going to be wrong about TCU.
Get ready for the most useless hour of your day. It's time for Boxed Lunch, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Now, Casey, run that track.
I am Trace Fowler. For those of you that are just joining in, we had record numbers on Friday. I was not here for personal reasons, but I do have some thoughts from last Friday that was conversated about within this room. We also have some things that obviously happened this weekend that we're going to get to. You can see the list, the rundown, if you will. Reed has come up with the term schmoin flip, which, you know, again, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure exactly what that all entails, but they are here to explain themselves. We have Reed, Paul in his TCU gear, which is cute. I'll leave it at that. And then over here on the right, Seho and McAllister, because I'm going to say your name correctly. Guys?
Trace. Georgia, minus 12.5. Let's rock.
Paulie, I love that you're wearing the TCU gear and are you gonna go with the dogs tonight?
I'm already locked in. I'm already in.
I locked in yesterday before it moved.
I also locked in before it moved. 12.5, baby. Let's go.
Let's rock and roll. Let's get it rolling.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Tom's obviously he's all in on TCU, very much so. His daughter goes there. He started getting on that. You want to talk about a front runner bandwagon? I tell you this right now: if TCU were to have finished 7th in their conference in their league, like they were voted to do before the season started, I don't think TCU would have been brought up inside these rooms or the halls of this building, hardly at all. But that's here nor there, I think, is the term that they used. Seho was at the game yesterday, the Bengals game. We're going to get to that. And then, obviously, McAllister. Is that actually, obviously, how you say your name before I keep butchering it?
Yeah, McAllister.
McAllister. Okay. There is an O there. I don't know where the A would come from if you're doing McAllister, which is not a bad place for lunch from time to time. So, fellas, here's my thing on the coin flip. We got into this on Friday a little bit. It seems as if it doesn't matter now, but I would argue that I still have a small issue with the whole situation. I'm not going to go back into the whole, minute details of this because obviously that has passed to a certain extent. But I do think that it was ridiculous, utterly ridiculous, quite frankly, that the NFL had these rules and regulations put in that weren't in place beforehand, did a vote, which the vote felt very much like a formality before they even casted it as a vote. Because let's be honest, outside of 3 teams, the rest of the league probably could care less about this situation. Maybe you could say the Ravens, so we'll say 4. So 4 out of the 30-plus franchises could care less about this situation. They're just going to vote what everyone else seems to be wanting to vote or whatever's easiest for the league. So that's what happened. The vote passed. And the problem was the coin flip in and of itself, right? I mean, here's where I still think it matters. That game, like it or not, with the unfortunate circumstance that happened, Bills v. Bengals, has so much implications on this playoffs that it doesn't even, quite frankly, and I'm not saying it's a wash, cancel the season, this is a tainted championship for whoever wins. I'm not going to go that far, but I am going to say that it was a huge, huge deal. And it almost feels like we skipped over like the middle innings of a baseball game, perhaps, and we're just acting like, well, we'll play basically the first 3 innings and the last 3 innings, and we'll call it good. The problem I have is that the Bills are slotted to be the 2 seed now, and the Bengals obviously the 3. When the Bengals had the destiny of their own fate sitting right in front of them. And I'm not going to sit here and complain about the coin toss as if it's everything. But I do think that there should be at least a neutral site game if those two were to meet. Now, I know that you've dubbed this as the Schmoin flip, so maybe the Bengals fans, and I heard your plea on Friday of saying we shouldn't care about this anymore. Who cares? We're ready to move on. And I think the players have done that, which is all that really matters, and the coaches have done that, which is all that really matters. But it begs the question, and maybe you guys can eloquently tell me why. Between the four of you, somebody give me a good reason as to why that game, the Bills and the Bengals, if they were to meet in the second round, why that game is not at a neutral site field. Who wants to go first?
Well, it's probably because the Bills won one more game than
they have a
the
better
Bills
record.
won one more game.
They have a better record.
They played the same amount of games and they won one more game.
Simple as that.
I think it's that simple.
And I think the whole coin flip thing started to get under the Bengals fans' skin, simply because when we talked last Wednesday about what the NFL was going to do following the Bills Bengals game that wasn't going to get to be played, and I think we all thought it was just going to be chalked up as a no contest, which I think as Bengals fans we were all okay with. I think we already conceded that something crazy happened, it's a no contest, we move on from there. Where it started to rear its ugly head is where they implemented this rule that if the Bengals lost to the Ravens, then a coin flip would just define that home game. So they added a rule. If they wouldn't have installed that, then what about the Bills game? What about if we play the Chiefs? All of that would have never reared its ugly head if they wouldn't have made this circumstance for the Ravens. That being said, it's all a moot point because the Chiefs won, the Bills won, the Bengals won, so it's all slated 1, 2, and 3. And the reason that we're not getting a home playoff game or a neutral site is because they have a better record than us.
Are we just going to act like that game just never happened, I guess? Is that theoretically what we're supposed to do? Are we not supposed to act
Correct.
like the game started off, you went right down the field, scored a touchdown, held them to 3 points, marched right down the field again?
No, there's no doubt that the Bengals look good, but there are still 50 minutes to play. The Bengals looked like they were going to beat the Patriots by 46 the week before, and they ended up winning by 4. There's 50 minutes still to play.
I understand what you're trying to do, Reed. I really do. And I almost agree with you. Like, I get it. Let's just go on, move on, kick everyone's ass. I get that. But it's the fact that the league made the rule and didn't apply it to everyone else.
Yeah, that was the point that I was saying. Is if they didn't make this Ravens rule, then we wouldn't be caring about the Bills game. We wouldn't be caring about where we're playing the Bills game. It's just the fact that they threw in this Ravens rule that has reared its ugly head, and now we're like, wait a minute, why isn't this equal across all platforms? That being said, everyone won. It doesn't matter. We're back to square one, which is that the game was a no contest. The Bills are the 2, we're the 3, the Chiefs are the 1, which I think is where we're all going. And to think that the Bengals have moved past this clearly isn't the case because Joe Mixon flipped a coin in the end zone that just keeps rearing its ugly head when it shouldn't.
Well, here's my counterpoint to that, is that if you're the Bengals, then at that point, if you had fair and equitable rules from the start, you would have not had to play your starters throughout the rest of that game yesterday. They would have sat all of their guys at halftime, and I'm not here to forecast what could have, couldn't have happened, but I'd say you're much healthier today than you would have been if the coin flip wasn't instituted. The only reason that the starters were in the second half of that football game yesterday was largely because they wanted to make sure they were going to win that game, and the Ravens, give them credit, kept it just close enough throughout that football game that it felt like they had to keep those guys in there. The other part of it is like the Ravens, they just forfeited the right, obviously, to try to get the home field coin flip.
Yeah,
they just decided it's better chance. First of all, if we win this game, still not 100% guarantee, 50-50 chance we even get a home playoff game. And then on top of that, we don't even have, obviously, our starters. Like, we don't have our first or second string quarterback. So they got the best of both worlds. And the Bengals, in my opinion, got the worst of it all. And I'm not here to try to make excuses for them, and I'm not here to say that they can't go on and win a championship. But I've said this time and time again, it has felt like the Bengals have been in a situation where they have not had an opportunity to take any kind of break or have any kind of rest, where the rest of the league, to a certain extent, has had that.
Yeah, they got a rest for not playing the entire Monday night game, and that's essentially a bye week. They played 10 minutes of hard football, so that's the bye week. And then Secondly, I'm not going to continue and talk about it. My point's been made about that. If you worry about what the circumstances that you find yourself in, then that's a loser mentality. You just go out and win the game. And so I'm not going to worry about the fact that we had to play starters for an entire half. Is it fair? Probably not. Or for an entire game, but is it fair? Probably not. But so be it. Just go win the games. Don't be a loser and worry about what's happening to you. Just go out and bestow your will upon other teams.
That's fair. There's obviously Nitty B Moore, which is obviously a Baltimore fan, has been in the chat. I'm not a Bengals fan. I'm just laying out the facts of what I see from an outsider's perspective. And in all honesty, Baltimore can win this football game. I think most Bengal fans, rational Bengal fans, would admit Baltimore can win this game. The only thing I would say, as Bengal fans, as I've said it all along, you have Joe Burrow. And when you have Joe Burrow, you can win a Super Bowl. The problem with the Ravens are they're similar to me like a Jags or like a Tennessee Titans. They're probably, maybe not the Jags, but definitely the Tennessee Titans. That's who the Baltimore Ravens remind me of. It is what it is. I mean, you can make the playoffs, that's fine. But as far as actually making a run into the playoffs, it's actually thinking that you have a chance to win a Super Bowl, the thing that really ultimately everybody's trying to do anyways. If you don't win the Super Bowl, it doesn't, and I don't want to say it doesn't matter, the season doesn't matter at all, but at the end of the day, you're going to be sad. It's not going to be the ultimate accomplishment. And if you're a Baltimore fan, I do genuinely feel somewhat sorry for you because you don't know what you have at quarterback, and then on top of that, you know, you have to watch that offense every week. Like, that seems to be, I'd be mad too, you know? It seems like it'd be really boring and not a lot of fun. Because I had one take from yesterday when I watched that game is like, I, for sure, from now on, have come to the agreement that if I'm going to a game that doesn't have one of the teams that what I would call I'm a fan of, it doesn't mean I'm not going to go, but I'm not going to go in their expectation of being able to truly be able to see the game. Because that's the one thing that's just difficult when you're at the game. You just don't really get a chance to be able to see it like you do on TV. We've talked about that before in here. But anyway, that leads me to the next point, and we can get into this now. Is Lamar going to play? And that's the ultimate question. The line, which is obviously what I base a lot of things off, the line seems to indicate that he's going to play to me. Do you guys have any thoughts, comments, concerns about Lamar Jackson and him playing?
Well, I mentioned it on Tom's show, but I saw contingency lines put out there that Lamar playing put the line at 5.5. It was Tyler Huntley. It was, I think, 7.5 or 8.5. And then if it was the guy from yesterday, it was 10. So clearly they think he's going to play, in my mind.
He has to play. He's healthy enough. If he's healthy enough to play, he has to play if he cares about his career going forward at all. Because if you if you have any intention to sign long-term with the Ravens, like I think Lamar actually has an inclination to do, I think he just wants a big contract. If you want to sign with the Ravens long-term, he's got to play in this game. How can the Ravens give him a contract if he won't play in a freaking playoff game?
Maybe he feels like this team isn't good enough to win the Super Bowl, and if they're not good enough to win the Super Bowl, why go out there and risk it? That could be what he's thinking.
I think that if he has any desire to have a market as a quarterback to either get signed somewhere else or to get signed long-term, he has to play this game if he's healthy enough to play, and I think he is healthy enough to play, so you got to assume that Lamar Jackson's going to play.
McAllister? Go ahead. Finish your point.
If he doesn't play, then how can a team say, we're not going to sign you long-term? I know some team will, but it's going to limit his market.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to limit his market if he doesn't play. But are we even really sure that he's going to be ready to go and that good? I mean, he hasn't practiced in almost over a month. He hasn't stepped on the field. I mean, to me, you already know how I feel about him. I am.
What's your opinion on Lamar Jackson? What is it?
No, don't go down that bit.
I would love for him to play. I think it would actually be bad for the Ravens. I think they'd be better off playing Tyler Huntley, who's had snaps, and that is me being serious. I'm not trying to do a bit. I think them playing Tyler Huntley would actually be better. Lamar has already been stated that he's, at least in the locker room, there's rumors swirling around that he's not fully invested. I don't know. I'd be worried if Lamar played for the Ravens. I wouldn't be so worried if it was Tyler Huntley.
What has Tyler Huntley showed you that makes you think at all that he's a competent quarterback compared to Lamar Jackson.
Tyler
Lamar Jackson started a game,
I
Casey,
just
that the Bengals lost. And I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, they played on the road. It was in Baltimore. I think it was a night game. I believe it was a primetime game, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. So I will say that the circumstances aren't the same for Huntley versus Lamar, but the idea or the notion that Lamar is not the better option of a Huntley versus Lamar thing, I'm not completely against that take that you've said, but I will say the phrasing that you use from time to time seems maybe a little over the top for me, because it's almost like there's this huge separation between Huntley and Lamar. It's like, listen, if Lamar gets hot and does play well, he's light years better than Huntley. But to your point, Huntley has shown that he can play within a systematic offense and kind of be almost, like a system guy, a guy that's not going to maybe lose you the game, but he's certainly not going to win you a game.
Before Casey throws a counterpoint out, I'm just going to lay some stats between Tyler Huntley and Lamar Jackson. Since Tyler Huntley has started the past 2 years, in games he has started in.
I'm not even talking about their performance. I literally just said, taking away the bit, Lamar has not played in over a month, guys.
Okay.
That's what I said. I think you would be better off playing Tyler Huntley, who literally just rested this week. That's all I said.
Okay.
So to be clear, to be fair to you, you're not really saying that or suggesting that Huntley is just a way better quarterback than Lamar.
Not this time.
You're basically just saying, not this time. You're basically just saying that, listen, Lamar sat for a month. There's no way he's going to be able to go out there and in Cincinnati of all places. So you're on the road and you're going against a good Bengals defense. You're thinking that month layoff is going to be an issue, which no one's going to theoretically argue with that. I just think based off the line, the question of the day is Lamar going to play? And I think that the answer is yes, but I'm not so concerned, or I wouldn't be so concerned if I'm Lamar about his quote unquote market if he doesn't play. There's always going to be a team in the NFL that's going to stretch. There's always going to be a team in the NFL that thinks that they're only a quarterback away from being able to win a Super Bowl. And there's plenty of teams that could say that and have somewhat of a case, right? The Jets are the first team that comes to mind. If the Jets have Lamar Jackson, is there a chance that you would argue that they're one of the teams that possibly could be going to play for a Super Bowl? And I think the answer is yes, they could. But they don't. They're in a situation where they don't have a quarterback, and it is what it is. If he sits in this game, to your point, Paul, it largely, in my opinion, would not be about the fact that whether or not he's a good person or whether or not he's a competitor. Yeah, you could say that there are true competitors, don't get me wrong, that would no chance in hell sit this game no matter what. But if you look at this Ravens roster, they are not good. They are not going to win a Super Bowl no matter what, guys. Yes, they can beat the Bengals. This isn't a bit about the Ravens are so bad they're going to get smoked or nothing like that. It's not that. But they have zero chance of winning a Super Bowl, no matter who they have back there at quarterback. Look at the receivers. They literally got Sammy Watkins, who was basically sent to the curb by a team in the Green Bay Packers who had hardly any weapons to begin with. And the next thing you know, this man's starting in Baltimore. So if I'm not going to put it on Lamar to sit here and say that, to your point, he is looking to get paid. And for his case, maybe he deserves it, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But I'm not going to make it about his character if he doesn't play. And I know for a fact in the NFL, look no farther than to Cleveland to say, if you think that a quarterback is the thing that you need, you're going to go to whatever case you need to go to get one. Did anybody have something to add? I think Seho was going to say something.
I was going to pose this question. Flip it on Bengals fans. If you had Joe Burrow out the past month and he hadn't practiced, Brandon Allen played the past month, was serviceable. You can't tell. No, it's the same type of question. Would you rather have Joe Burrow or Brandon Allen play? I think the answer is pretty simple.
They're two different types of players.
Ravens want Lamar Jackson to play.
Yeah,
and I'm looking square in the dead at both reference pages for Tyler Huntley. In his 8 games that he started over the past 2 years, the Ravens are 3-8. He passes for an average of 116 yards a game. Meanwhile, Lamar Jackson over the past 2 years is 15-9 and passes for 210 yards a game. And Tyler Huntley's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. There's not a single Ravens fan that wants Tyler Huntley to play over Lamar Jackson.
I get your
don't
point,
make that
Casey.
point.
I get the
I don't think
point.
anybody in the clubhouse wants Tyler Huntley to play over Lamar Jackson.
Listen. I'm not arguing that Tyler Huntley is better than Lamar. And Lamar is a special case in this scenario. His whole game is based off of his legs, guys. You don't get hit for a month. You're not using your legs for a month. No skill guy comes back the same unless they're freaking Jamar Chase or whoever you want to name that's a star. And I get it. Lamar is a star. There's a chance for that. But there's a reason he didn't come back in 3 weeks. There's a reason he's been out and didn't try to play in this game. Right? Are we in agreement on that? Is he still hurt?
Well, there's nothing to play for this week. He wasn't going to play regardless. There's nothing to play for.
I think they conceded as a playing this game regardless. So I think he never really had a chance to play.
We're not saying that you're saying that he's a better quarterback than Lamar. It's the point of what, who's going to you're going to want Lamar to play no matter what. I
think everyone in the Ravens locker room wants Lamar Jackson
It's
to play.
the exact same thing that I just posed of Joe Burrow and Brandon Allen. If Joe Burrow didn't play for the past month and it was the same exact situation, we're not saying Brandon Allen's a better quarterback. I get it. He's got the team going and they're winning 3 or 4 games in a row, whatever it is, or they're in the playoffs now. But there's no one in their right mind. Joe Burrow could be as rusty as could be. You'd want Joe Burrow out there.
There's not a your team would want your starting quarterback to
yeah,
play.
I mean,
guys.
here's the
That's
only
not-
thing. I think Casey.
Okay, so then I don't know what
your
you're
guys
arguing.
are spinning Casey's point a little too far out of context. I think what Casey's saying is simple. It's relatively straightforward. If you're the Ravens, do you trust in a guy like Lamar with his skill set, the things that make him successful? Do you trust the fact that you can sit around for a month and not play and then come back in a very meaningful game and play at a level in which you feel as if you're not going to lose the game for your defense? Because at the end of the day, that's what the Ravens, in a nutshell, are. I mean, they are a very defensive-oriented team that they need their offense to go out there and score just enough to win the football game. And I think Huntley has proven, to a certain extent, that he's capable of at least going out there and being serviceable. If Lamar is healthy to play and he says, hey, I'm going to play, guess what? He's playing. I think the only thing, and we'll move on to the next point with the Bengals, is this. Casey was just trying to say that he thinks in his mind he would prefer Lamar to play largely based off the fact that he feels like Lamar isn't going to play well based off sitting for a month. Doesn't mean that over the course of a season he wouldn't play Lamar. Casey, did I at least somewhat eloquently state your thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Well, I would push back on that. Still, even refocusing what your point, and I would say that John Harbaugh, the ownership, the team, and the near dozen fans that the Ravens have, that they would look and say, which quarterback gives us the best chance to win this game, Tyler Huntley or Lamar Jackson, who hasn't played in a month? Every single one of them, including the dozen Ravens fans, would say Lamar Jackson.
Fair. All right, so let's move on to the Bengals' health. It was something that I brought up weeks ago. I'm not saying or forecasting that, look at I told you so. But it is something that every team that wins a Super Bowl needs, and it's called luck. And you might not believe in luck. You might sit here and say, that's a made-up thing. Opportunity meets preparation. That's luck. Listen, sometimes you need to be lucky, right? In order to win a championship, more times than not, it requires a small sliver of luck. And the Bengals needed just a little more luck when it came to their health, right? Collins goes down in a situation that nobody could have protected him in. It wasn't like it was somebody chopping a guy's legs. It was unlucky. And then obviously yesterday, you have another lineman that goes down. And now I ask the question to you guys, how as Bengal fans do you feel about your health going into the playoffs? Do you feel as if, obviously you're going to say, yeah, it's somewhat concerning, but do you feel yesterday like doesn't matter, we still have all of our weapons, we still have Chase, we still have Joe, we still got, most of your defense is relatively healthy.
Boyd and Higgins got hurt yesterday too.
They did, but they kind of came back. It seemed like it was a situation where they'll be fine. But now we're in a position where, listen, let's face the facts. The one of two things that needed to happen has not happened, which was being healthy.
So we lost Collins. There hasn't been a report on Kappa yet, right?
He's just in on a scooter.
So
yeah, we saw that in the back of one of the pictures or something.
Okay, so
Dan Hoard said it wasn't a good outlook.
Okay, so let me eloquently put this point. If Jackson Carman starts this playoff game, Reed Mouse, will light myself on fire. Let me put it that way. Because Jackson Garman, the schmuck that he is, should not be playing for the Cincinnati Bengals, regardless of how bad the offensive line outlook is.
Man,
so I don't feel great about the health of the offensive line is where I'm putting.
I don't have a whole lot to add. I just brought this topic up because, and maybe we want to move on it fast because we don't want to talk about it. But it's just something that always comes into play every time you're trying to win a championship, and it is the health of your team. Are you getting guys back? Are you playing at what you would call a quote unquote an elite level? The Bengals, for all intents and purposes, look the part against the Bills. Is all I'm saying, man. I mean, they look the part. Yeah, it's a lot of game left. But the concept of, and you said earlier, they had their bye week when they didn't have to play. Well, I wouldn't really consider that a bye week. Yeah, there's this physical component that you only had to play a little bit of a football game, but the mental component of that whole situation, and then having to deal with the situation of the coin flip and feeling like you're slighted. It just feels like things, from an outsider's perspective, have not gone well for the Bengals in the past week and a half. And listen, if you go out and you beat the Ravens by 2 touchdowns, then maybe that's all a moot point and you don't care. But the injury yesterday, like it or not, seems to be looming larger than I would like it to be, as someone that lives in Cincinnati that hopes that you guys have some success and some fun, because obviously we all want your friends to have some fun, and I want nothing more than the Bengals to make a run. But from an outsider's perspective, it just seems like, you're doing one of these on the way in instead of one of those, which is what it seemed like things were going in the Bills game. Thoughts on that over there at the producer table?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a coin flip, schmoin flip, so is the player health. I mean, next man up mentality. Don't be a loser about it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point, Casey. I don't know if that was an I gotcha thing, but I'm on board.
I'm just saying, let's go. Let's get ready. Let's kick everyone's ass.
Cool. I'm on board.
I want to believe that too, but it's when you look at Monday night, the way the offensive line looked on that first drive, even without LC out there, and then you fast forward 6 days, and now you lose another starter. I mean, I think there is a little cloud over that because, I mean, you just lost two of your top 3 offensive linemen in 3-4 weeks.
The biggest weakness that the Bengals have is against a good pass rush, and that obviously has expanded a little bit further. And to think that, just got expanded a little bit further, the Bengals' biggest weakness.
All right, we're going to go around the room, and I want to ask all you guys the same thing I asked Thom. Gut, Monday morning. Are we sitting here next Monday morning, the season's over, or the Bengals win? Gut, just gut. Forget about the cover. Forget the cover. The Bengals win.
Yes.
Trace, go ahead.
Well, I tried to wrap my mind around what would it feel like if the Bengals lost this Sunday, and my mind can't wrap around it yet, so that's not good.
Trace.
I think this game is very much like the Georgia-Ohio State game for me. It's going to be close. It's going to be close. I don't know if the Bengals, put it this way. I would be shocked, royally shocked, if either team won this game by 10 points or more. And if in a game like that, anything can happen. So if you're a Bengals fan, I think you just hope that they played with a vanilla offense this past week and they didn't want to give up too much of their playbook, if you will, of things that they think they can attack that defense with. And hopefully Joe Burrow plays a little bit better. But at the end of the day, listen, the Bengals are the better team. I think they'll win.
Casey?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, Reed is right. They're going to just play their game, and they're going to slaughter them. Right?
Did I say that?
Well, you said that's what their mentality should be, and I'm just saying they're going to show that on the field, and they're going to slaughter them.
Yeah, winners don't worry about circumstances.
Right.
I think this will be a very close game. I think the Bengals win by 3-10. It'll be maybe close to the fourth quarter. We'll see. But yeah, I think the Bengals win. That's what we're talking about Monday. Also, AJ asked if I was on a leadership scholarship at LaSalle, which was for athletes. No, I did not get one of those.
Tough.
Yeah.
Did
tough.
Drew Chrisman get one?
Don't think so.
Man, just no love for the punters over there in the Lancer land.
He looked good yesterday in person, though. Legs look good.
How about Drew Chrisman, that punt that was the coffin corner punt that ended up creating the
Yeah, it's a
fumble.
plus 300 in Madden 2004.
It is, baby.
That's big. I mean, listen, he should have been the punter for a long time, and I had no disrespect to Huber, but at some point, you know, the one thing that the Bengals organization from time to time has done, from the outside looking in again, is they held on to guys far too long, and they've hoped and prayed that these guys would do relatively well and keep doing well because of maybe the personalities they were in the locker room, but they needed a punter for longer than just the time that they had Huber. I mean, with all due respect to Huber. One thing I wanted to bring up, Sir Boy said that all playoff games are close. No, they're not. No, they're not. Listen, the Bills might beat the brakes off the Dolphins. I can tell you right now, the Seahawks are going to get their brakes beaten off by the Niners. When I say a close game, I mean you can go back in a football game and you can point to 2 or 3 or 4 plays, and that was the difference in the game. That's how close I think that this Bengals-Ravens game was going to be. I hope that I'm wrong for the Bengals' sake and they go out and they play well. But for whatever reason, the idea of being able to substitute a whole new offensive line in week 1 of a winner-take-all game, I think there's going to be some growing pains with that. Does it mean I think that they can't win a Super Bowl anymore? No, I don't. I wouldn't say that. As long as number 9's behind center, I think the Bengals can win a Super Bowl. And the best quote that I've seen all weekend, which, again, you guys know I'm a press conference guy. If you've watched the show, I listen to a lot of press conferences. The best quote I've seen all weekend is when Joe Burrow, someone was asking about windows. And I get the point from the reporter. It's not a bad question. The reporter has every right to ask, you know, do you feel any pressure because you're in this window of opportunity with the Bengals where you have a lot of guys on rookie contracts? And Joe Burrow just said, listen, my window is my career. So, and that's the attitude Joe Burrow is going to have, and he should, because he's a guy that, in my opinion, has everything that you want in a starting quarterback in the NFL. And it's not largely just because he can throw the football, right? Mm-hmm. The thing that he does incredibly well, not that we need to turn this into a Joe Burrow segment, that I don't know if he gets enough credit for. Certainly in Cincinnati, they might want to say that he gets enough credit for it. But nationally speaking, I have not heard people bring this up enough. He extends plays like the greats have always done. I mean, he's not super fast. He's not ever going to wow you with his athleticism. But he is just savvy enough to be able to make a half a step to the right or a half a step to the left, run a little bit to the left, and make a throw. He does that more times than people want to give him credit for, in my opinion. And yesterday, he did have that incredible play where he ran around for a minute and then kind of got the edge and got like a 4 or 5 yard gain, and everybody oohed and awed over it. He does that a lot. Does he get credit for that enough?
Yeah. Well, Trace, you've been big on the point for quarterbacks that use their legs have a long window here in the NFL. That's been your point from the get-go, right? I mean, guys.
My point is that if the first thing you bring up about a quarterback is their legs, they are not a franchise guy. They are not good in the NFL. It's not even a hot take. Look at the history of the league. Go find me a guy that's won the whole thing time and time, or not even time and time again. That's not fair. A guy that's been in Super Bowl contention throughout his career, right? Played on really good teams, and the first thing you bring up about a quarterback is their legs. Go ahead. Is it Mike Vick? Who is it?
Joe Burrow gets credit for his ability to extend plays. He really does.
Extending plays and running the football because you can't throw the football are two different things.
Escapability is certainly a trait of great quarterbacks, and Joe Burrow has it. There's no doubt about that.
Fair enough.
So you're bringing up Wild Card Weekend, and that Sir Boy said most Wild Card games are close. He said
all playoff games are close.
Yeah, let me pose this question. What would surprise you the most? Which upset would surprise you the most this weekend?
We'll go all the way around the room for this. The biggest upset in the entire NFL to me would be the Seahawks beating the Niners.
More so than a Tua-less Fins?
Yeah, I think I can't get over the Dolphins.
I want to – I mean, that's right there neck and neck. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
This is splitting hairs. But I do think that there's something about the fact that you've already beaten a team once before this season, right? Couple that with the fact that the Bills, like it or not, have been in this little situation they've been in for a couple weeks. What would be 2 weeks by the time they played? And then on top of that, I'm not sold on the fact that Teddy Bridgewater is not going to play. I'll say this. If the third-string quarterback for the Dolphins beats the Bills, then I would agree. But I'm also going to say that if Teddy Bridgewater plays, the Seahawks would be a bigger upset for me.
Over the Niners?
The Finns are what, 1-6 over their last 7. Their one win being this weekend.
They just survived into the playoffs.
When they didn't even score a touchdown. Big shout out to Schmaltzy on that pick. Guys, what would be the biggest upset that you could see?
Miami.
Yeah, Miami. I think I said Jaguars before, right? On Thom's show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jaguars.
That's only a 1-point spread.
It is.
Chargers are only a 1-point favorite.
To me, I think it's the fact that it's the Jaguars. Like, in my mind, I know they just made it to the championship like 4 or 5 years ago. How long ago was that?
They went to the AFC Championship under Blake Bortles in 2018 when Tom Brady lost to Nick Foles.
So about 5-6 years ago. I don't know. The Jaguars, to me, like, I would love to see it. That's, I think, where it comes from more than it is the biggest upset. I think the biggest upset, though, would be the Bills, though, and how Tual's Dolphins would be insane.
Can I tell you what you Bengal fans should be rooting for hardcore? I mean, you should be rooting for this team about as hard as you can root for a team that's not the Bengals, and that is the Chargers. And you think I'm being funny, you think this is a bit, it's not a bit, I'm being dead serious. I genuinely think that if the Chiefs have to play the Chargers one more time, they are in trouble. When you have to play a divisional opponent 3 times, and the first 2 times you played them, you narrowly escaped both games with a win, I'm telling you, the last thing that the Chiefs fans, I'm sure, and the Chiefs, and you can say what you want, all the players don't care who they play. Yeah, they do. Yes, they do. The Chiefs do not want to play the Chargers, okay? And at the end of the day, if I'm a Bengals fan, I would be hoping and praying that the Chargers, which is not a guarantee. Listen, the Jags are a good football team. But the idea that the Chargers would have an opportunity to go play the Chiefs for the 3rd time and beat them, there is a chance, right, that you're hosting the AFC Championship at home. I don't think the Jags have a prayer in hell to beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead. They don't. But the Chargers do. And it's basically the same reason that if the Ravens played in a different division than the Bengals this upcoming week, we probably would have a little bit of a different outlook on this game too. When you have to play a divisional opponent 3 times in a season, and especially when the first 2 games were close, you don't want that. And I'm telling you, the Chiefs do not want that smoke. They don't. And I would call it right now. If that happens, the Chiefs are going to lose their first game.
I think there's something to be said for teams that have to play their divisional opponents 3 times because it's like you've seen everything. It comes more down to who's the better Joe than it does the scheme and that mattering, right? And that's kind of how these games go when you play your third team.
They get really muddy the 3rd time around, don't they? Yeah. Every time it seemingly gets really muddy. If you had a crystal ball and you see the Chargers beat the Jags, whatever, doesn't matter the score. If you had a crystal ball, what would you guess the spread would be? The Chargers going into Arrowhead.
4, maybe 5. 4.5 or 5.
That sounds fair. You don't think it'd be a touchdown?
No. And if if it comes out and it's a touchdown or more, then Vegas loves the Chiefs. But I don't think that'll be the case. I think that's one of those games where they put the line at 4. 80% of the squares will be taking the Chiefs because they think they're the better team. They haven't watched the 2 first games against the Chiefs and the Chargers. And in all reality, outside of, and again, I'm not going to sit here and say it's luck, fluke, whatever. But if you go back and watch those games, the Chiefs were very fortunate to win those games. Very fortunate. It almost would remind me of like a Georgia-Ohio State. Like, oh yeah, well Georgia won. It's like, oh yeah, but it took a lot of miracles for that to happen. So, I think the same thing about the Chargers and the Chiefs. It's a bad matchup for the Chiefs. And I don't know if the Chargers can win because they got to fly cross country, play a Jags team.
Did that spread surprise you? Chargers only being favored by a point? As a gambler, the foremost gambler on this show, does that spread surprise you?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. It makes me think that the public's going to take the Chargers. Yeah, it does.
I mean, it's shaping up like that. 69% of the bets on Chargers, 82% of the money on Chargers.
But again, it doesn't. It doesn't obviously, as we know in this office lately, been a home run slam dunk with that. But at the end of the day, more times than not, Vegas wins. And when they're allowing the public to bet one side heavily without moving the line a whole lot, they're taking a stake in the game, like it or not. But here's the beautiful thing about the NFL. It's an unbelievable product. I can't tell you how excited I am. And then as a Packer fan, I was sad last night largely because of Aaron Rodgers' last game, and it's the end of an era. But I will say I look forward to being able to watch the playoffs without having your full investment in it, right? Like as Bengal fans, you guys are in it now, but it is nice actually. Like I'm going to turn the TV on this weekend, watch a bunch of NFL games, and it's going to be enjoyable to watch them all.
Agreed.
I want something to cheer for if I'm a fan. That's a bad take. My team's not in it. You know what? It's nice this year. I don't have to worry about us winning the Super Bowl. I'll just sit back and enjoy everything else.
Yeah, if the Bengals weren't in the playoffs,
I would be less happy if the Bengals were not in the playoffs.
Correct. It'd be a little more solid.
Yeah, it's a different outtake though, right? Like my point is
you're tired of the Packers being in the playoffs all the time.
It's not that. No, it's not that at all. I wanted them to win like hell last night. They have a chance to just ruin the 49ers season like they have time and time again to the Packers. My overall point is that I don't have a lot of emotional stake into the playoffs. You guys might sit here and you might think that that's a bad take, but when you come in here on Monday and you're like, I don't want to watch the rest of the playoffs, fuck them all, excuse my language, you're going to think, man, Trace gets to watch all these games just as a fan. And it's nice. It kind of is nice.
That was our beat button. We don't have one, so that's the closest thing.
Gotcha.
So, it's funny. So I've sat on this show and argued. You mentioned the NFL being just an incredible product. I've sat on this show and argued about the NFL over college football. I was at a party on Saturday, and we had on the Michigan State college basketball game, which I think was like 29-20 final score. It was low scoring. It was 50-46. And they were doing the exact same argument that I do to Trace about college football, being like, man, this product sucks. They were doing the same thing as Michigan and Michigan State are just bricking threes left and right. Just wide open threes, not even coming close to hitting the rim, getting down in the paint, missing layups, and they're just like, man, this sucks. And I've come to the realization that both college football in the NFL and college basketball in the NBA are the same distance apart. They truly are. The difference between the products are when college basketball, the skill level is a lot lower than the NBA. They're bricking up threes, and there's not a whole lot of scoring going on. In college football, when the skill level is different from the NFL, at least the difference is they're just busting 70-yard Hail Marys down the field or busting 70-yard runs, and they're scoring a lot more as opposed to college basketball where they don't score as much. So at least it's more exciting when the quote-unquote product isn't as good. I mean, you watch a college football game, you'll see 3 60-yard passes every single game. You watch an NFL game, you can go an entire week without seeing a 60-yard pass.
True. It's two different products. It's always been two different products, and it's a matter if you like them or not. And the college football and the NFL are two completely different things. All right, Lovie Smith, really fast. We won't spend a whole lot of time on this because I don't know if people really care. I don't know how much we really care. But at first I was like, what are the Texans doing? Right? Like, what idiots? And then outside the office today, it dawned on me, like, wait a minute. Lovie Smith knew he was going to get fired. And he was like, watch this. He's like, we're going to go for 2. And you guys aren't going to get your number 1 pick. Heck, he knew what was coming. He knew he was getting fired. If he wasn't getting fired, there's no chance in the world they go for 2 right there. But since he still had like the keys to the house of the ex or something. Yeah. He's like, I'm going to go in there. I'm not going to burn the house down, but I'm going to shake some things up in here a little bit. And I feel like that's what he did. Are we overthinking the idea that Lovie Smith knew he was going to get fired and decided, I'm going to go out on a limb here and go for 2 when I know that's the best chance of us winning this football game and denying the Texans the number 1 pick after I get fired? I'm going to do it, and it succeeded.
Well, and then he comes back in the press conference right after, and he's like, yeah, I had no expectation of getting fired.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, he came. Somebody asked him in the post-game press conference, "Do you think you're going to be back next season?" And he said something. I'm paraphrasing. I don't know what the quote was, but he said something to the effect of, "Yeah, I fully expect to be back next year."
So he made it to the press conference. We've made a running joke on this show. He's like, they might, like we said about Coach Cal, like if he loses to Louisville, do you think he's going to get fired on the floor? Do you think Lovie Smith was fired? Like he walked off the podium of the press conference afterwards, and the owner's just like, "Hey man, yeah, I know you just said you think you're gonna be back next year. I'm here to tell you right now, like we're gonna get somebody else now."
Yikes! Yeah, I mean that 100% happened.
What do the Bears do with that one pick?
That's a great question.
They have to trade that pick.
I mean, they just got gifted more draft picks essentially because they can trade that to somebody who needs a quarterback.
Oh yeah,
and go down to the 4 spot and get another pick later in the draft.
Then we can finally stop hearing, "Oh, we don't have any weapons here in Chicago." Right, Trace?
That's right. Casey, I can't wait for it. I hope that they trade back and they get 2 wide receivers.
The worst thing that can happen in this office is Casey and Trace getting on a bit together because that's what we got with the Bears. It's what we got with Patrick Mahomes, the whole 9 yards. It is too. Yeah, it's the worst thing that could happen in this office.
Well, here's the thing. So far, what we have said has not been turned out to be false in any form or fashion yet. It hasn't.
Batting 1,000.
In fact, you guys were such negative influences on Casey that he decided he was going to convert himself into thinking that Justin Fields was actually relatively good. And the truth is he's not. He's going to be injured half his career. He's going to miss wide receivers that are wide open from time to time. And he's never going to be a quarterback in this league that is sustainable and going to win you championships.
But he's the most exciting quarterback.
Second.
He's really good at the over on rush yard props. Really good.
It's true.
I had a lot of those this year, baby.
It's true.
Well, that's what happens when you have the quarterback of the National Football League that almost broke the rushing record for a quarterback over Lamar Jackson of all people to tie that ribbon around that portion of the show. We'll talk TCU Georgia real fast. Obviously, I have a big rooting interest in this game.
Big financial interest in this game.
Yeah, I put the second largest bet I've ever made in my life, responsibly, of course, on Georgia to cover, and I feel really good about it. And I really, to a certain extent,
on Betfred,
feel like we're getting a gift as gamblers. Not often do you get the opportunity to lay a wager on a game where, quite frankly, if the circumstances were different and or the perception of the public was different, would probably be a 17, 18, 19-point spread, maybe 20-point spread in certain cases. The truth is that TCU has been on a roller coaster of a run. I'm not taking anything away from them. They've had an unbelievable season. They've had an incredible amount of what I would call fortune. I'm not going to say it's luck, but they've had an incredible amount of fortune. And at the end of the day, a team that went into overtime with Oklahoma State, double overtime with Oklahoma State, a team that lost to Kansas State a few weeks ago, a team that had to rush a couple guys on a field last second to kick a field goal to beat Baylor at the last second, a team that, quite frankly, had a situation against Michigan where they turned the ball over 2 times inside the 5-yard line, threw 2 pick sixes, and still was a call away from possibly losing that game at the very end. I'm not concerned at all. Now, having said that, if Georgia were to lose, quite frankly, it would probably be one of the worst losses in the history of my fandom. Because I go into this game not really at this point, having a rooting interest in the game per se. It's more or less at this point just like, can Georgia win by as many as I think they can win? And that's not a good way to go into a football game, but that's how I genuinely feel about it. I think TCU is going to be introduced to the idea of that Cinderella run in the tournament where you got a team that's a 14 or 15 seed that gets into the Sweet 16 and then they get in the Elite 8 and then the reality sets in. And that team that made it to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 loses by 30 points. That's how I feel about it. AJ in the chat was asking is Darnell Washington healthy? Ladd McConkey healthy? Darnell Washington is supposedly questionable, and I think Ladd McConkey is 100% going to play. He's been quote-unquote injured all year long, and he has been injured, but he's not missing this football game. Listen, there was one team in the country that could beat Georgia. It was Ohio State. I said it from time and time again, and I still believe that. And that point was proven. Ohio State very much could have beaten Georgia. It didn't happen, and now TCU gets a chance to play Georgia, and I don't think that they're ready for this smoke, fellas. I really don't. Now, you guys can try to talk me off this ledge. You can try to sit here and tell me, well, what about this? What about that? Maybe the chat will chime in. I'll let them chime in as well. I'm sitting up here telling you that right now, if Georgia and TCU played, now this is where you can laugh at me, and hopefully you can clip this for your own sake. If they played 100 times, my gut, my heart of hearts tells me that Georgia wins 98 out of 100 of these games. That's where I'm at on this game.
This is the largest spread in the, 24 years that they've played a national championship in college football. This is the largest spread that there's ever been in the national championship game.
Right.
The closest was Alabama, -10 over Notre Dame a decade ago. Of course, Alabama won by 1 billion. And then Ohio State were 11-point dogs against that Miami Hurricanes team 20 years ago. So I don't want to – the two other largest spreads, the underdog won once.
This game's going to be decided by a pass interference call.
Just saying.
Is anyone taking TCU in this office?
I am not.
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay.
The other –
I was sitting there looking at it on the Betfred app going, oh, man, $25 pays out $122.
I will say this. It's one of those weird situations where if I were to bet on this game – there's no way that I'm going to take the value in the fact that if TCU can hang around, they might have a chance to win. I'll put a little bit of money on the money line for TCU, but that's it. That's almost like a little sprinkle just to have a little bit of fun with the opportunity of what you said. It pays out incredibly well.
Right.
But I just don't think that there's a whole lot of value in the points. I don't.
Is there a chance they cover?
Here's the problem I have with the whole situation with TCU is that they've played in a league that has not shown themselves well in the bowls. And you could say that means something. You could say it doesn't mean something. I don't care, right? But at the end of the day, they played in a league where they struggled to win every game. Not just one game, not just 2 games. They've had 3 or 4 close games in that league, right? And yeah, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, look at Kentucky and Georgia. Look at Missouri and Georgia. and look at Ohio State and look at what they did to Georgia. Okay, that's fine. Look at what Georgia did to Michigan last year. Do you think things changed that much? What did Georgia do so much differently this year as opposed to last year, where Michigan this year is so much better than they were last year? How come Michigan fans think that this year's Michigan team was so much better than last year's Michigan team? You lost Aiden Hutchinson. You lost the other kid that I can't think of on defense. And somehow, just because McCarthy's a year older and there's no Blake Corum, like at some point you just realize that Michigan might not just have been as good as we all thought they were. And they went into Columbus and give them all their due, give them their flowers. They won a football game they should have never won. But outside of that, TCU has had a situation where, in my opinion, they've not played a whole lot of quality opponents. And then at the end of the year, right, they played against Michigan, and Michigan played horrible. They played horrible. And you can sit here and say all you want. Well, that was TCU. TCU did that to Michigan. Did they? Did they cause them to fumble at the 1? Did they cause them to do a flea flicker play action or whatever the hell they were trying to do on 4th and 3 at the goal line down there? Did they throw 2 pick sixes? Yeah, I guess you could say that the TCU caught them and ran them in. But we'll see. At the end of the day, all I'm saying is if you want to be a square, bet on TCU. And come back. I'll be back here tomorrow regardless. And you know what? It is going to be hell on earth if Georgia were to lose this game. Because I've done nothing but sit here and tell you that TCU is not that good.
We'll have some clips if TCU.
Is there any world? I'm serious, and I'm asking this because I'm considering you've convinced me maybe responsibly doubling down on this. Because I'm like I said, I'm already locked in at 12.5, and I don't like that it's already up to 13.5.
You have TCU covering 12.5?
No, I have Georgia.
Oh, okay.
What would
What
would make you think that I would pick TCU?
You wearing a TCU sweatshirt right now.
Thank you, Brandon. I'm genuinely asking because I've watched maybe 2 Georgia football games this year, like full Georgia football.
I only watched the Missouri and Kentucky game. That told me everything I need to know, those 2 games.
I have watched TCU, mostly because of Thom and wearing this hoodie every Friday and Monday for the last 15 weeks. Is there a world where TCU can exploit Georgia and win this game? Is it the secondary? Like, I'm genuinely asking as somebody that knows this Georgia team extremely well.
Yeah.
Like, is there something that TCU that you're looking at tonight that if we get to the end of the first quarter, you send us a group text and you're like, maybe we like kind of sprinkle the live line?
Right. Stetson Bennett gets hurt.
Okay.
As far as I know what you're trying to ask me, and I don't know if I can give you a good answer.
Okay.
I guess
that's
the question.
Fine.
I guess
no answer is a fine answer.
The question I would ask to the public, to anyone in the chat, to people that are making fun of me, thinking that I'm just a homer for Georgia, is give me a reason as to why I shouldn't believe this. Give me an actual X's and O's reason as to why you can sit here and say that whatever TCU is going to do is better than whoever else can do it, because there's not any pundit that I've come across, which watching all the podcasts and anything, you know what they talk about with TCU? What do they say? They say they got Max Duggan. He's a gamer. They got this TCU team. They've been on this high for a while. They find ways to win. They're a bunch of gamers, but they can't be like, hey, TCU is going to be able to run the football on Georgia. Matched up one-on-one, like it or not, there's not a Marvin Harrison Jr. on this team. There's not an Njigba. There's not any player close to Ohio State's relative status. And at the end of the day, do you think that TCU's offense can score 30 points on Georgia? That's the question of the day. If they can, they have a small chance of winning. But Georgia's offense, right, whether Darnell Washington plays or doesn't play, Michigan's offense, no disrespect to Michigan, who had 17 points against Illinois in the final week of the regular season. And you can sit here and you can say, oh, look at Georgia. Let me tell you something about Kirby Smart, and he will do this. And maybe you could argue Michigan does this too. Kirby Smart will take the air out of the football as soon as he knows they can win the game. He is not one to keep running the regular offense that scored him all the points. If you watch the Tennessee-Georgia game, Georgia could have won that game probably by 30 to 40 points. It started raining. They ran the football up the middle 3 times in a row for the last 5 possessions of the game because they knew they were going to win the football game because Tennessee couldn't score whatever it was, 28 points in the last how much time's left. So the only thing I would be concerned about as a Georgia backer is if it's a 31-7 game, call it midway through the third or early getting toward the fourth, Kirby Smart will literally tell the offense to run the football 3 times in a row, go 3 and out, punt the football, and they're not going to be able to score 3 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns in the last quarter of the game. As long as they don't make mistakes offensively, that's Kirby Smart's philosophy. And sometimes it will lead to games. Like Georgia in the Kentucky game had 2 offensive possessions, I think 3 offensive possessions in the first half. They had 3 field goals. So they scored every time they got the ball.
I think a lot of fans probably have the feeling that I do if you're not a Georgia fan or a TCU fan. I'm a long-suffering Cincinnati fan. So the heart of my sports fandom wants TCU to complete this Cinderella story. I also think that Georgia is going to crush TCU.
Well, that's what I was going to say to Trace's point about he's like, no one can give me X's and O's why TCU would win this game. And at some point in sports, it goes beyond rational thought, you know?
Yeah.
Like St. Peter's last year, they can't win this next one. They can't win this next one.
That is a good point.
And like TCU, you can't explain it. They just keep winning. And that's literally the only point that you can put on is just some things go beyond rational thought. Now, I looked up preseason odds to win national championships out of all the national champions in the past 20 years. Now, there's been some long odds. Joe Burrow and his LSU team were 33-1. Ohio State back in 2014 were 40-1. Auburn with Cam Newton, 50-1. You've got Nick Saban's first national championship at LSU, 40-1. TCU's preseason odds to win the national championship?
200-1.
200-1.
I just guessed that.
If you put $100 on it, you'd be looking at a $20,000 ticket.
Oh
if they pulled this off tonight.
How would you hedge that?
You put 10 grand. Yeah, how would you?
How would you hedge that?
Because Ohio State is such Georgia's such big.
Like I'm serious.
Favorites.
Like,
how would you hedge?
I'm not personally much of a hedger.
But you.
But at that extent of money, like.
What would the cash it offer be? It'd be like $2,000. It'd be like $1,000.
Yeah, I don't know. It wouldn't be that much because they're such big underdogs.
What's the money line for Georgia?
Let me check Betfred Sportsbook. Official sponsor
My guess
of the
is
show.
minus 360 somewhere in there.
Oh, it's
minus 370.
What, Georgia?
Yeah,
Oh, they're gonna
minus
be like,
470.
they're gonna be like
They are
minus
minus
1,000.
450.
Minus 450. So you got to drop 450 to win 100.
Yeah.
So $4,500 wins you 1,000.
Yeah.
Nah, that's tough.
That's tough,
That's
though.
a tough play. Yeah, I don't think you can hedge it. I don't.
Well,
I
you
mean,
have to hedge it somehow to get at least
well,
like $1,000.
Okay, so you put down $5,000 to win 1,000 or 40, whatever it is.
Yeah, to say if as long as Georgia wins,
At least you win $1,000.
yeah.
Because you go any more than that, what is it? You want to risk $10,000 just to win $2,000? That's half your earnings.
What's minus 6.5?
Right. Now,
There
you
an
could play
alternate
that.
line?
You could play that alternate line game. I don't know. I mean, that's a good situation to be in. I do like the chat. I mean, listen, Everett, I've seen your chats in here. I also see Sir Boys. Georgia's been fortunate. They've been very fortunate with the whole wide receiver situation. I'm not going to sit here and act like they haven't been, but nobody in any championship wants to bring out the alternative viewpoint, right? I'm not going to get into the Ohio State game because I think there's Ohio State fans in here. And listen, as a Georgia fan, I have a lot of Ohio State fans, and I don't really like rubbing it in because I just don't think that that's like relatively appropriate. So I'm not going to talk much about that game specifically, but Georgia didn't have their best wide receiver all year last year, George Pickens, who's arguably one of the best rookie wide receivers in the NFL. So if you want to sit here and act like, oh, they don't have this guy, well, okay. Well, you're going to bring up the fact that Georgia lost their number one wide receiver. In regards to AJ, had a comment in regards to the number one wide receiver for Georgia. I wouldn't consider Ladd McConkey the number one wide receiver for Georgia. I know that his statistics show that he's the number one wide receiver for Georgia, but Georgia has much more talented wide receivers, in my opinion. A.D. Mitchell, who is their number one wide receiver, quite frankly, has been out since week one of the entire season. Came back, obviously, for that Ohio State game and made some plays. Was a big impact player. You got Rosemary Jack-Saint. He's a great player. They got Brock Bowers again, who's been quietly cold for quite some time. You have a couple running backs in the backfield who are – listen, if Georgia doesn't score 40-plus points in this game, it's an incredibly disappointing performance.
Do you think because it's the national championship and you talk about what they did against Tennessee where they took their foot off the gas and everything else, do you think because it's the national championship, Stetson's last game, all this, that maybe they don't?
I got a feeling they might not, yeah.
And they just put 60 up on him and he lets Stetson go out on a high?
Is he going to be the first college quarterback over the age of 40 to win a national championship?
Yeah, I mean, I get that take as well. I think it's.
I'm just being sarcastic.
I know
he's
you
a great
were.
player.
I mean, there's a lot of those guys. Hendon Hooker's an older guy. Sean Clifford's an older guy.
Wasn't Craig Krenzel older when he played at Ohio
State? He
State?
may have been. I don't know. I mean, listen.
How old is Stetson? 25?
Stetson's 25.
Okay.
And I'm a big fan of Stetson. I thought Stetson had been, when he came into football games earlier in his career, when he was the third string guy, when you watch guys throw the football and you watch guys make plays, at least for me, sometimes I put away the narrative of, oh, well, that's the backup. He's probably not that good. I think coaches miss sometimes. I think college coaches miss on players from time to time. And I'm not going to bring up like the Joe Burrow situation. Listen, if you're at Ohio State and you're winning football games, you keep the starting quarterback in there because you have to,
Right.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, like I do think in college, there are numerous times. I go to Kansas with Bill Self. He redshirted Ochai Agbaji when he was a freshman thinking that he wasn't good enough to play at Kansas. He turns out to be one of the best players in Kansas history.
Well, you look at Sauce at UC. He was a backup. Someone gets hurt. He comes in that UCF game, turns out to be a top 5 pick. There's a lot of colleges that had college coaches that had no interest in him.
Correct.
Top 5 pick.
I do think that's one thing I'll say, that TCU, you give them credit. They don't have these 4- and 5-star guys. Listen, I'd hang the hat on the idea that if you got a lot of good players, give them time to figure out if they're good players or not, right? TCU, we might be talking about the fact that they had Max Duggan and a couple guys that I don't know off the top of my head. But listen, if Max Duggan goes out there and he has a 15-year NFL career and turns out to be one of the all-time greats, this TCU little Cinderella run looks way different, right? It's like it's hard to in college put a stake in how good somebody is before they get, a fair opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, sadly enough, I'm not sure there's many players that get a fair opportunity, quite frankly. I think Stetson was that. That's my biggest thing with Stetson. It's not so much like the JUCO story and all that. It's that he stuck around when the coaches basically told him that he wasn't good enough, and he just decided he was stubborn enough to think that he was. And it just so happened an act of God happened where literally 2 quarterbacks get hurt. They got no other choice to play the kid, and he literally goes and he saves the season, and he wins 8 or 9 games. And now they lose to Alabama, but at least at that point you could say, well, we might be wrong here. So it is a wild story. No matter what happens tonight, you're going to have an unbelievable story. Mm-hmm. And now you could say Georgia is obviously the one, and I get it. If I'm not a Georgia fan, I'd rooting like hell for TCU. But between Stetson Bennett, who's going to have a movie made out of him, especially if he wins a national championship this year, and the Max Duggan situation with TCU, you're going to have an unbelievable story. And that's why sports are great. The last thing I'll say on this whole situation is that Boom Shakalaka, with the best comment of the day, said we can all at least agree that the starting time for the kickoff is something we can all agree that we like.
What time is
7:30.
Oh,
that's
so
great.
I saw that, and I got nervous because I thought it was the thing where they advertise the pregame show.
Yeah.
You know, where they say, like, oh,
the
it's
Nissan
7:30,
kickoff.
but
Yeah.
it really doesn't start till 8:15. But it sounds like it's kicking off at 7:30.
You know, Trace, you just brought up the point about, like, Joe Burrow and not starting a guy who's winning games. It just brought up a memory. Remember when the Clemson Tigers sat Kelly Bryant, who just won the national championship, for Trevor Lawrence? Balls on Dabo Swinney, who's a well-liked guy on this show. Well-liked guy.
Well-liked guy.
NIL.
We all love Dabo Swinney.
Yes.
A lot.
We believe what NIL, name, image, and likeness of Jesus Christ. Love that guy. Let's get in the vault. What picks you got? You've already said your pick, Trace, right?
My pick is relatively straightforward. Listen, I'm putting an unhealthy that's not true. I'm putting half the amount of money that I've grinded to try to win this season, and I am up, thankfully. I'm putting half of the money that I've won on Georgia. Again, is there a chance they don't cover? Of course. Is it free money? Maybe not.
What did you get it at?
But I got it at 12.5. And I also think, to be quite honest, I sent something in the Discord earlier today. I don't know if you've seen it, but like, there's value there. There's real value there.
For the people that haven't gotten it in yet, that are nervous about 13.5, is that still okay?
I don't think it's going to matter.
Okay.
But
I just wanted to, people might be asking.
Yeah.
Hammer the over.
Well, you can get it at 13 on
Bedford. Oh, is it still? I've seen it hovering around.
I think it was just at 13 earlier. It might have gone back to 13.
I will say, if you like Georgia, do it now. The line's not going to move back in the favor of TCU at all. It's not.
It's 13. It's 13. So you'll get a push if 13.
Okay.
So
all right.
You're not on the hook anymore.
You taking? Well, yes. I mean, I am taking Georgia, but I'll give a different pick. Oral Roberts and New Mexico.
Oh, baby.
Under 162.5.
How much money are you going to lose on New Mexico before they teach you a lesson?
Well, so I'm not going to pick a side this time. Because I'm 0 for 2 on the Lobos in the last week. Damn. They killed me.
I like in this game, someone explained to me why I shouldn't take the under in this one. And I'm of the belief that I'm going to take Georgia the spread. And if I believe that Georgia is going to cover the spread, that means that I think that TCU won't score. I don't think TCU is going to score more than 25 points. So that would put a responsibility. The line is at 63.5. That would mean that I believe that Georgia's got to score over 40 points today. I just feel like the under, that line is so high. 63.5 is so high that if it's not a competitive game, if it's right where Vegas thinks it's going to be a 2-touchdown game, that Georgia's got to score well over 40 points.
You know what makes me also concerned about the over is I've seen on social media, I'm not going to give them any pub, but I have seen on social media other sports books promoting
the
promotions on the over.
Bedford has a promotion right now. You know what it is?
Yeah.
What is it?
TCU
and the over. TCU money line and the over.
Oh, well, okay.
So TCU spread.
TCU spread.
Okay, so then that's the same boost that I'm talking about. I didn't want to say for sure until I made sure it was Betfred. That's the same boost I'm talking about. Makes me think the under.
I'm not hammering the under, but I'm definitely going to be playing the under.
Yeah.
I'm hammering the spread.
I'm not going to play it just because I don't want to lose and be rooting for not. I don't want to get to a point where it's like
rooting
we
for
need
no
a Georgia
points.
touchdown to cover, and I'm like, well, the under.
The only concern I have for the under is if Georgia gets just red hot and they score 50 points. Listen, Michigan scored how many?
I think even for Georgia to score 50 points, there's going to need to be a defensive. Like, not that I don't think that Georgia can put up a bunch of points. I just don't think they're going to. Like, I think if they get a big lead, like you said, they're just going to take the air out of the ball and let's run the ball. So the only way in which Georgia scores 50 is if Max throws 2 pick sixes. So I really like the under. I'm trying to talk you into the under.
I know. I'm sitting
You got any puck?
No puck tonight. No
puck.
No puck.
But you know puck.
I know. Well, look, I'm 3-1. I'm taking a couple days off after that tough loss by the Preds.
Anything. Don't force anything.
Just relaxing here. Trace, who's I'm doing a 3-leg parlay here. On the game tonight.
Yeah.
Georgia cover.
Yep.
I'm debating on the over or under after hearing Mr. Reed Mouse give his take on that. I think I'm still going to take the over because I hate not rooting for points.
Yep.
And then who would my anytime touchdown from Georgia be?
Well, you're not going to get good odds, I'm sure, on McIntosh. I'm assuming if you look at McIntosh.
Yeah,
he's probably terrible odds. Probably he's going to score.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Maybe.
There it is.
Yeah.
Minus 210.
I would be shocked if Kenny McIntosh does not score. It would almost be a situation where you would be like Joe Mixon. There's 3 rushing touchdowns, and Joe Mixon doesn't have one of them. Like, that's how I feel about the Georgia game.
Well, if I throw $20 on what I just said out loud, the payout's 92.
You know, one line on TCU's side that I really do think is a pretty good bet, especially knowing Georgia's philosophy on defense, and maybe they'll change it up, and I'll be completely wrong. Is I do think the over for Dugan. Is it Dugan or Duggan? I don't know.
Max Duggan.
Duggan. I do think the over for Duggan's rushing yards is like 38. You said out there.
I don't remember, but
anyways, it was in the 30 yards.
That sounds fair.
I have a genuine question. Maybe the chat will know. Maybe you guys will know.
It's the rush yards is 28.5.
28.5. I like that a lot. If sacks don't count as rushing yards,
They count against your passing total.
Okay, but if he gets sacked, we're good.
They changed that a few years ago to where if you
we're
get
sure
sacked
of
for
that.
minus 10 yards, it counts against your passing yards. At least in the NFL.
Can the chat confirm that for college?
Talking about stats, this is completely random, but after hearing the broadcast in the Bengals game yesterday, they said like the Buffalo Bills game didn't count statistically. Like your stats in that game didn't count towards your season totals.
Oh, yeah.
But the anytime touchdown for Tyler Boyd paid out from Vegas.
Well, they had already paid that out.
I know. That's what's crazy, though, to me is that like
they can't go in and withdraw your money back out.
Right, but I'm like I was a beneficiary of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I bet TB on the anytime touchdown. But then you hear that it's not going to actually count in real life in the NFL. It's kind of crazy.
Sean said that the college, they count against your rushing total.
I thought they did.
That's my concern then. That makes it so hard to gamble on that.
That's so dumb because the NFL changed it to where it doesn't
right.
Because these quarterbacks who don't run for a whole lot would wind up. You look at their total 15 years ago to be like Peyton Manning minus 36 rushing yards because he got sacked 5 times. Yeah. It's just that's dumb. Count it against your passing total and move on with it. College should do the same thing.
That makes that prop incredibly hard to predict then because do I think he's going to run for over 30-some yards? I 100% do. Do I think there's a chance he runs for 70 yards and the next thing you know he takes 5 sacks or 6 sacks that are bad? One's a really bad sack. I mean, could you, not to bring up bad thoughts of Bengals, but could you imagine having the over of Burrow's rushing yards against the Buccaneers the 1 week, and the next thing you know, you're 20 yards over, and he takes a 40-yard sack?
Nick Kirby wants to know thoughts on which alternate line is a better play: TCU plus 17.5 or Georgia minus 7.5. Georgia minus. If they're the same
if you've been listening to us,
if
I
they're
think
the
Georgia.
Same odds, if you can get the same odds on Georgia minus 7.5 or TCU plus 17. What?
What's Kirby's whiteboard look like tonight?
That's the same. I mean, Georgia's going to win. Well, I mean,
if Kirby, if you've been watching the show, we're all going to be betting. At least
we all
Trace
are.
and Paul are all going to take minus 13.
Yeah.
Minus 12.5. So why wouldn't we take 7.5? We don't think it's going to magically fall between 13 and 17. I mean, it might, but.
Are you already in?
No, I locked in.
Casey, Brandon, are you guys in?
I'm locked in on 12. Yeah, I'm doing that
12 and a half.
parlay.
We're all on 12.5.
Yeah.
Everybody here is on 12.5. Okay. Yeah. Just so I know that we can all be on the same page.
We also need McIntosh touchdown and the over for me.
I just listen. Here's my last thing on this. I know I'm a fan. I try. You've heard me say this before, guys. I've put my fandom aside from time to time in this office. I told you that Ohio State was not good. I'm telling you. Think about it logically for just a second. Should this matter? Should transitive property matter? Could you do the whole, well, Michigan played this team, and that team played this team, and this team played that team, and look at the scores? Yeah, you can do that. But I would also say this. Let's use the very most recent thing we know. Right? The teams at the top of the SEC in bowl games have done what? What did Alabama do to Kansas State? Kansas State just beat this TCU team. Georgia's been in the national championship before. Georgia's been in an incredible amount of big games with a lot of veteran players. Stetson Bennett, in and of himself, has played in probably what I would call 9 championship games. 8, maybe 8 championship games. I don't know. I'll have to do that math later. He's been a part of a team that has played in 8 championship games, whether it's the SEC or the national championship. To think that this team in this situation is not incredibly more well-equipped to beat a team that went into double overtime with Oklahoma State. Again, survived a fire drill field goal against Baylor. I'll say it again. I'll say it 3 times. Baylor. The things that you hang the hat on about Georgia are, well, they beat Kentucky 16-6.
Missouri.
They beat Missouri.
Tigers.
29-20.
Go Tigers.
Okay. Georgia's never been in a situation where they had to rush the field goal unit on to kick a 45-yard field goal to beat Baylor. And I know that this is all relative semantics. But just ask yourself, from a football perspective, what does TCU have, X's and O's wise, schematics wise, that they're going to possibly beat Georgia and or keep this game close? Georgia has more 5-stars in the recruiting class that they just signed than TCU has had. I guarantee you. Hopefully you can correct me if I'm wrong. I probably won't be. I'll double check it. I've never looked it up. But I'd be willing to bet that Georgia has more 5-stars on the last 2 classes that they've had than TCU's had in the history of their program. Ever. It just so happens that the teams that are at the top every year are the teams that also finish at the top of the recruiting rankings every year. It's not a secret. Clemson's at the top every year in the recruiting rankings. Clemson won national championships. Ohio State's at the top of the recruiting click. Ohio State won the national championship. Georgia's done it. Alabama's done it. But since TCU has made this run, we're going to sit around and act like 12.5 isn't the steal of the century? It is a steal. And the only thing that you're going to sit here and tell me is, well, they're on a Cinderella run. Have you watched them play? Yeah, I did watch them play their last game. I seen him get 2 pick sixes. I seen Michigan fumble the football 2 times inside the 5-yard line. I seen a Michigan team that was tied 17-17 to Illinois that honestly hasn't really been quote-unquote good. And the last time I watched Michigan play, they got beat 50-3 against Georgia or whatever the hell the score was. And you're going to try to convince me that TCU has got a chance in this football game? I hope you guys crush me tomorrow if I am wrong. I hope you guys sit here and you make clips for the next 10 years. But I'm also going to come in here tomorrow with a smile from ear to ear when I took an incredible amount of money from Vegas. And I'm not even taking it from Vegas. I'm taking it off the squares that are betting TCU.
You're taking it from Fred. You're bankrupting Fred.
Exactly. I've already used the 4-letter word once this show, but I'd say it again if I wasn't going to irritate some people. Fred is, you know the word, tonight. Because I'm taking Georgia minus 12.5, and that's all I got. Is there a wheel of lunch today? What are we doing? That's my last thing on this.
There is a wheel of lunch. It's fired up. Where do the people want us to go? What do we got? It's a Monday. Reed, what do you got?
We got Charles.
Jimmy Johns.
Gabriel.
No, Jersey Mike's. Jersey Mike's.
Oh, yeah.
Jersey Mike's. We're going to put Penn Station on there just in case.
Yeah.
We'll see. Hopefully we finally get something from Penn Station.
I do think that game tonight, like the first quarter, will be fun. Like I just feel like Max Duggan's gonna have to have a couple touchdowns.
I would also say this: watch the game for the first maybe 8 minutes, like you guys have said, and live bet it as fast as you can.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Absolutely. Unless Georgia goes down and scores an early touchdown, then it's gonna be.
If Georgia goes up 14-0 out of the gate, just for fun, I'm gonna put 5 on the live money line for TCU.
Well, it'll probably.
That's not a terrible idea.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Given how much I will win if Georgia covers the 12.5, that's not terrible.
Right, throw $5 and you'll probably get at least your money back.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it will go back and forth early though, and then eventually Georgia's just gonna run away in mid-second quarter or the second half.
Yeah.
I will, man. After this game though, this week's gonna feel so long getting to the playoff game.
Oh, getting to the Bengals.
Gonna have to bet a lot of college basketball.
I like.
We got a good week of college basketball. Look, I don't need to get on my soapbox right now because we've been doing the national championship, but it's got a good week of college basketball.
Oh, college basketball is back. Baby.
College basketball, Xavier number 12 today. Yeah, it'll be a fun week. Number 25.
We need more. What do you need? More places? Is that what you're asking?
Is Panda open?
No way they're open.
Is Panda open?
Put Wendy's on there for Paul.
No. I'm vetoing.
What about Taco Bell?
Yeah, throw Taco Bell on there. I could use Baja Blast today.
Waffle House.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I'd go to Waffle House.
Yes. All right. That's enough.
Sir Boy said Uncle Woody's. I don't think they have food at Uncle Woody's. I've been there toasted many of times. I don't think I've ever got food there.
They didn't have toast? Oh, what does that mean?
Jordan. Wait, did we put Firehouse on there too?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Fire it up. Spin it.
Good for Paul.
All right.
Good for Paul.
Good for the brand. For
Good
me.
for Paul.
Not for the chatterbox.
Boom shakalaka. Drink your lunch.
Good. It's not even there.
All right. Yeah. I mean, that's basically.
That's a good
That's
start.
no lunch.
That's a good start.
Yeah, basically no lunch.
You have to drive to the closest Panda.
I would love Jersey Mike's.
Shit, what are you doing here?
Oh.
What are you doing here, Paul? Jinx it don't exist.
They don't exist, but that's tough. Just not Waffle House.
I wouldn't mind Chipotle.
Is Chipotle on there?
Now it's
God.
not. God, we got a serious shot of going to Waffle House, and I'm thrilled about it.
Oh, I don't want.
You don't want Southern Hibachi? Oh my God! What is going on?
All right.
Oh man.
All right. Let's go. There's food at the Oak Tavern.
There is food at the Oak Tavern.
Nuclear code.
I don't think I'm making it.
Go.
Stay.
Go.
Stay.
Go.
Stay.
Go.
Oh!
No. I think him hitting the desk.
You want a Taco Bell?
I'm not a big Firehouse kind of guy. I'll be honest with you.
What?
He's a Penn Station guy.
I'm not a Firehouse guy.
Man, what
I'm
happened?
just
Who
not.
Hurt you? Who hurt you?
No one hurt me.
Do you not like firefighters? Fed Red
Hey,
Line?
listen, this is gonna be fun. I hopefully, as you know, I this game tonight has a lot riding on it.
Feel like we need a Casey Bart for the
personally,
game.
But more importantly, hopefully you guys are doing a lot of clipping that you can save for tomorrow's show in case something goes horribly wrong. I take all this back if Stetson Bennett gets hurt in the first drive of the game. But outside of that,
last thing before you go,
what's up?
How many units are you up on the college football season?
College football was up like 27 units.
Okay.
I'm putting half of that on Georgia.
Just so people know how well you did on college football.
Yeah, college football did great. I'm so ice cold right now. It's unbelievable. I've never really been this ice cold before. I thought about getting superstitious and then being like, I'm not doing the Discord thing right now. But you know, it is what it is. I'm gonna try to put my jinxes and things of that nature don't exist brain to the side because it doesn't make any rational sense.
It doesn't.
But that said, I still do think jinxes exist. College football is a sport that we've all done well in here, as if you've been in this office, which you guys have, we've done well. It's a shame college football is over, and now we got to figure out college basketball because I'm not figuring that out well at all. I'm just gonna ride the Discord, probably general chat bets because those have been running. I did have to sweat out a game that Nick Kirby suggested. That hit, oddly enough. I was watching a Stetson Hatter versus North Alabama basketball game on Saturday. It's classic. Went to overtime. Be honest with you, it looked like no disrespect, but it did look like Lakota West versus Lakota East at times in that game. But that's gonna do it for the show. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As always,
who sponsors this show?
Bet responsibly. Betfred Sportsbook. We are appreciative to them. If you're gonna gamble in this game, go bankrupt Fred. That's the guy. He's got plenty of money. So
what is the sportsbook?
He will not
tagline?
have sore pockets, or what I would call it, empty pockets, if you take money from him. What's the
tagline we're trying to create?
They are the sportsbook of Cincinnati. That's not officially from Betfred, but it's officially from Chatterbox. Because if you look around, it's not hard to see who the leading sportsbook is in this town, and it is Betfred. And I'm going to take a boatload of his money tonight. I look forward to it. Look forward to seeing you all again on Wednesday. Thom will be back in here tomorrow talking about whatever he's going to talk about from 10 to noon. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.